I was this close, right? People getting shot around me. There was thousands of casualties in those coups. I've been in protests all over the world. I can spot an agent provocateur like a Florida boy can spot the difference between a cattle egret and a blue heron. They're quite different. They pop off the page if you know what you're looking at. And so that was a setup, January 6th, obviously. This is old as time. I don't know when the first agent provocateur has happened. Of course, it's an old French term. So people say that's when they invented it. Highly doubtful. So agent provocateurs, it's an old form of, getting things going and creating casus belli, right? That's another form of creating sort of casus belli. Casus belli is cause for war, right? So October 7th was casus belli for doing the genocide in Gaza, which is a clear genocide. They want that war. They want that war with Russia. They want to defeat Russia and Iran, and China. Remember, that's SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And if you want ultimate corporal power in this world, you need to control Panama Canal. You need to control Suez, Bab el-Mandeb, Strait of Hormuz. You need to control Malacca. The essence of the beings, these oligarchical structures that they're fighting, there's many of them, or they're fighting each other, and we are part of their we're part of their from our everybody's at the center of the universe, right? Everything is the center of the universe, and every moment in time is the center of time type thing, right? For us, our problem set is these oligarchs that are all trying to kill us or control us, but they're fighting in between each other, and then we're just part of their problem set. Some of the oligarchs want to remove us from the equation. There are people in oligarchical systems that are close to us that are genociding us, right? They're taking us out of the equation. That's what's happening. They're genociding through jabs, through other methods. They're invading our countries with migrants who are actually invaders, and because they're taking us out of the equation, and they're taking the Europeans out, and they want to take the Japanese out, and they're working on it. Japanese are heavily jabbed. Dr. Yasufumi Murakami, who Masako is very good friends with, she works with them on this project. They've collected over 25 million records now of Japanese jabs, and more than 600,000 they believe are dead just here in Japan. Pandemic and famine and war go together. 4 horsemen, right? It's 3 of the horsemen. And so, pandemic, famine, and war, they're like a triangle. If you get a big war, you're going to get pandemic and famine. If you get a big famine, you get war and pandemic. If you get they just go together. It's like an isosceles triangle, and so anytime you get a big war, like World War II, there was all kinds of little famines in there and typhus and all kinds of stuff broke out. We just tend to focus on the shooting parts. It's the way warfare has been going since forever, right? It's unrestricted warfare. Most forms of warfare people can't even see because they're invisible. They're happening in the realm of mathematics. They're happening in the realm of printing money. They're happening in the realm of intoxicants. You can see that, but you don't realize it's actually a weapon, right? I go against the Chinese Communist Party. Boom. That's a big money source for a lot of people, right? I go directly against them. I've written 3 books attacking them that are only in Japanese. I go against the Chinese Communist Party, and I go against Zionists. Boom, boom. The 2 major oligarchical galaxies right there. And I go against them on a regular basis, and Trump for the submunition little firework. So it's like boom, boom, and boom against Trump. That's shutting off flows of resources to me, but I'm on a mission.
Welcome to Discourse with Christian. I'm your host, Christian White, and today's guest is Michael Yon. Michael is a veteran war analyst, author, and photographer. Michael, it's an honor to have you on the show today. How you been?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm actually in Nagasaki, Japan, another center of globalism, which is just such interesting proportion. It's hard to explain in 30 seconds. It's hard to explain in 10 or 15 minutes. It's easier.
I've never been over there, and there's a lot of places I need to check out. So I'm jealous.
Yeah. So Masako Ganaha and I, we travel the world together, researching routes and resources. When you're looking at a lot of these wars that are going on and people have this idea that they're separate or they can't quite put these pieces together, for instance, the invasions of the United States and Europe and here in Japan, there's a lot of so-called migrants who are coming into Japan. This is all part of an invasion, right? And this is part of a larger structure of war. And part of thanks, Masako. Masako just gave me a notepad here, which I need. But the larger array of weapons that are being used against us include, for instance, the death jabs. They include intoxicants, which have been used in warfare since, I don't know. I mean, it goes back, it's biblical. I mean, literally biblical. And I read a lot of old books, like a lot of old books, and you should see how many times intoxicants pops up in warfare from centuries ago. Yeah. Um, and, uh, and so information war is the highest form of warfare, right? And a subset of that is psychological operations. And the rocket fuel of psychological operations is intoxicants, whether that be alcohol, cannabis, whatever, right? The whole array of weapons. Now, you'll get people that know nothing about this, but smoke a lot of dope, let's say, and they'll say, why are you talking about cannabis when there's alcohol? That's like saying, why are you talking about landmines when there's rifles, right? It's like, okay, whatever, man. It's all part of the same war, right? It's just, when you get on a battlefield, you're not being hit with one weapon, right? You're going to be hit with a lot of weapons, right? You're going to be hit with psychological operations. You're going to be hit with landmines, artillery, airstrikes, whatever, poison gas, right? It's coming at you, planes, trains, and automobiles. That is the nature of war. And unrestricted warfare, which is for most people kind of a new idea, I think, based on the Chinese book, which I recommend everybody read, Unrestricted Warfare. But it's an old form of warfare. The idea of unrestricted warfare is nothing new. One thing that you'll learn from reading old books, which I've done since I was young, is that nothing really is new under the sun. I mean, these things that a lot of people think that are new are not new. I mean, I don't find anything new except for the technology. That obviously, is new. There's always new technology, but the actual behaviors of people and why we actually fight, nothing changes, right? It's always about routes and resources, routes and resources. Even the ideological fights often at their substrate are about routes and resources, right? Like, for instance, here in Nagasaki, I'm in Nagasaki, Japan. Nagasaki, most Americans probably remember it because that's where the second atomic bomb was dropped. The hypocenter was very close to where I'm at now, actually. So where I'm at now was destroyed. And so Nagasaki, why was Nagasaki even attacked? Well, actually, let's go back in time. Let's go back about 500 years. Routes and resources. The Portuguese were the first really super globalists. I mean, there was a lot of people that tried to be globalists before and spread ideologies everywhere and that sort of thing. And there was Genghis Khan and all that. You know, they were kind of local, but not until really we had much better ships and the ability to sail around the world did people start to really do globalism on a big scale. And the Portuguese were really the first, right? And so the Portuguese, well, they ended up here in Nagasaki, right? In 1549, as an example, Francis Xavier, right? Everybody pronounces that differently, but so he landed he landed in a different part of Japan. He ended up here. And anyway, the Portuguese ended up earning the name of Nanban, which means Southern barbarians. You know, the Portuguese were pretty barbaric. And so anyway, the Portuguese were the first real, true, let's say, actual globalists. There were a lot of people that tried, but now suddenly they had great ships, right? And, you know, in 1492, of course, you know, rewind about 50 years, you had Columbus coming over to the Americas. He ran into Cuba and he thought that was Japan. He thought he was where I'm at now when he found Cuba, right? You know, and so, I mean, and you know, in the late 1400s, we didn't even know the Americas existed. Of course, the indigenous people that lived in the Americas knew they existed, but the Europeans did not even know the Americas existed. They didn't even know North, South, and Central America were even there, right? And so, but they kind of ran into them and thought they were in India. So, you know, so now we call them Indians, right? So we all know that story. So this was all happening contemporaneously, right? So we have the Spaniards and the Portuguese, but especially it was the Portuguese started doing their thing, and they ended up here. So at the end of the day, the Portuguese got kicked out. Nobody liked them here in Japan because they were kidnapping Japanese, taking them off to India, taking them off to Brazil to be slaves and that sort of thing. And so there was, and also the Portuguese were spreading Christianity, which was at first not a problem for anybody until it became, well, it was just like Islam is now, a very political, and still is actually a very political religion. I'm Christian. It is, and at the end of the day, let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, the Christians here actually sponsored a rebellion, and it went on and on and on. So the Japanese, long story short, were tired of the Portuguese, the Nanban, the southern barbarians, as they called them, and they didn't like the Russians either, and they didn't like the Chinese, but they let the Dutch come in. So the Dutch had a little trading post here in Nagasaki at a place called Dejima. I was at it yesterday. It's just down the road. Dejima is like a tiny island, very tiny, like super tiny, like you could shoot an arrow across it both directions, and like literally, and so that was where the Dutch could come and trade, right? The Dutch were not allowed off of Dejima. Most of them were not allowed off. One Dutch who was allowed off, Siebold, he ended up getting caught with a map. He was a spy, so he got ejected, that sort of thing. So, so I mean, there's all these, dramas in history. And but the Dutch traded here for centuries, right? And so the Dutch were, but Japan was isolated, and it was isolated because it had bad experiences with foreigners, right? There's a lot of Americans would like to close our borders today, and I'm one of them. Not completely closed, of course, but we need to deport tens of millions of people. I don't see that it actually happening, unfortunately, but Japan got to that point 500 years ago, right? So, but America and others wanted to open up Japan, and so in 1853, fast forward a few centuries, the Dutch still had their was not a colony; it was just a trading post, and the Japanese down Dejima, just down the street from me, right? And so here in Nagasaki, so the Dutch had their trading post, and the Japanese liked to have the Dutch here because they got intelligence from the Dutch about what was going on in Korea and China and India and Indonesia and all these different places. So that they got intelligence from the Dutch, and they didn't have any trouble from the Dutch. And actually, the Dutch had actually helped supply weapons to the Japanese to defeat some of the Portuguese who sponsored a rebellion here in the area. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of dramas. And so, but in 1853, fast forwarding to that, Commodore Matthew Perry, of course, this is before the U.S. Civil War, so this is 1853. Commodore Matthew Perry, famous here in Japan, took off in what the Japanese called the black ships because they were coal-fired and they gave off black smoke. But they showed up. They wanted to open Japan, right? It was a global mission, or let's say not completely global, but they came over from the United States, U.S. Navy, and came to Japan and demanded that Japan be opened up. They tried to do it peacefully, of course. Commodore Matthew Perry wanted to open Japan. Japan did not want to open up. So he said, I'll come back later. And he did. He came back in 1854 and he opened up Japan. Japan agreed to open up. Not all the Japanese wanted to open. Some did, some didn't. But here's the problem with globalization, which has always been going on since the beginning of recorded history, and it just keeps picking up steam. A problem is, in a country as big as Japan, some of your local leaders are going to become globalists. They're going to take those weapons, right? A lot of people wanted to do business with the Portuguese because they wanted the weapons. People wanted to do business with the Chinese because they wanted the weapons, and they wanted weapons, especially from the Dutch. Some people were going to open. If those people opened up and had the weapons, they would be ascendant in power, right? Because iron can get you gold and gold can get you iron, right? These things are transmutable in a sense, right? And so, if you got a lot of gold, you better have a lot of iron. And if you got a lot of iron and you don't have a lot of gold, you're going to go get it, right? And Japan has a lot of gold, by the way. And so, in any case, in 1854, the United States opened up Japan, or Japan opened itself, and the treaties were unequal as they generally are. And so then in 1859, actually, a Scotsman came here named Glover, and just down the road. And he really was the big opening up of globalism in Japan. It was Commodore Matthew Perry finally, set the conditions so that we would make the treaty with Japan later. The Scottish came, or he was actually at that point Anglo, because Scotland had been subsumed into the United Kingdom. Remember, let me backtrack a little bit over to Panama. The Scottish had tried to open up a route across the Panama Isthmus in the 1690s, and they failed, and they went bankrupt in the 1690s, right? And so in 1706, 1707, it was finalized in 1707. The bankrupt Scotland, they went bankrupt because they were trying to make a path between the seas at Panama before the canal, right? They went bankrupt, and so they got absorbed by England. And that's how Great Britain was actually, formed. They didn't really use that name back then, but it was formed in 1707 because Scotland, in their attempt at globalism, went bankrupt, right? So that's why Scotland is part of Great Britain this morning, right? Is because of that, right? Because of Panama going bankrupt in their attempt, right? So anyway, a Scottish man came over here named Thomas Glover, and he's got an interesting, there's an interesting park called Glover Gardens. Everybody in Nagasaki should go to it, and you can learn a lot about globalism there. So Glover came here, and he, opened up Japan even more, right? So they started doing a lot of trade here from Nagasaki, and he's got a big home that overlooks the port and that sort of thing. And you can see the old Dutch Dejima underneath where, his home is, that sort of thing. And so, it's layer on top of layer of globalism growing, right? And he actually started the first brewery here, as a famous beer named after anyway. So all these different things started. Then the first Japanese company started in I think it was 1869, right? And not far from here. We were in a small museum for it the other day. It was the first company in Japan, actually, started at that time frame, right? And 1859 or 1869, it was the first company. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the year that it opened. And actually, President Grant was here. He was in the same exact neighborhood, like, within a quarter of a kilometer from where that first company was. U.S. After President Grant was president, he was in Japan in 1879. He came to Nagasaki. Why did President Grant, on his tour around the world, go to Nagasaki? That's how important this place was for globalism, right? So Grant ended up, this is important. President Grant, he was an amazing American, actually. He was a serious military officer, fought in the Mexican-American War. He was down in Panama later. He was fought in the Civil War, of course. He's famous for Civil War. And then he did tours, you might say, as president, fought the Ku Klux Klan, really smashed them down, and did all kinds of things. He was a pretty amazing man. In fact, I've got 32 books on his letters, which are amazing. And in volume 29, he talks about his trip here to Nagasaki and his trips to Japan and China and all these other places. In volume 29 of Grant's 32 books on his letters, he warns the Japanese emperor, and as he had warned the Chinese, that foreign powers, foreign influences will come to Japan and to China, who were mostly peaceful at that time. Actually, before we came, Japan and China were mostly quite peaceful. They were both sort of introverted, actually, and very introverted, actually. And as you can see, because Japan had that period of isolation for over 2 centuries, right? And so they were introverted. And so at the end of the day, Grant warned them that foreign powers, of which Grant came over on a U.S. Navy battleship, right? I mean, he came over on a I don't know if they called them battleships back then, but it was a U.S. Navy warship, right? He came over on a warship, and he came over on a warship because the the U.S. Government wanted to show that Grant's visits around the world actually had some influence, right? He wasn't just there randomly as a tourist, right? So he was here in Japan. He warned the Japanese emperor, just as he had warned the Chinese, that foreign powers are going to come and they're going to try to make you fight each other. Foreign powers are going to come and try to make Japan and China fight each other. Grant warned about this repeatedly in 1879 in writing. Volume 29, you can see some of this in Grant's papers, right? You can get that online on PDF download, and you can see what Grant's saying, actually. So he warned them, and he warned that foreign influencers would come and make China and Japan fight each other and loan both of you money, right? Where did we hear this before, right? And then they will own you. They will own Japan, and they will own China. And sure enough, that's what happened. Foreign influencers came and got China and Japan fighting each other. Long story short, it continued to grow, right? And let's see, Masako sent me a message. Oh, the first company started, Masako sent me a message here by Masako Mail. Its first trading company was year 1865. Thanks, Masako. It was called Kameyama Sayachu. And Sayachu. How do I pronounce it, Masako? Sachu, right? And Misako herself is quite well known here in Japan for her research. She's a pretty intense researcher. We've been to 30 countries together researching this. Often we're down in the jungles in Panama and everywhere else. You wouldn't believe it. But yeah, this company was founded in 1865. So that was the year that our Civil War ended. And actually, we were up on a mountain or large hilltop here the other day where this company is, that was founded in 1865, and the samurai who started it, his name was Ryomo Sakamoto. He actually was wearing boots. He was known for wearing almost like cowboy boots, because he kind of adopted some of our formal wear with his sword, but he formed the actual first company right here where Grant visited, just 3 minutes walk away from his first company, right? So it's all interesting how much of this stuff happened right here. So this was the biggest Christian city in Japan, is Nagasaki, right? And in 1914, the year that the Panama Canal opened, more super globalism there. I have a whole library on Panama, by the way. It's quite amazing. Just hundreds of old maps and that sort of thing, and how all this fits together. But in 1914, when the Panama Canal opened, the largest cathedral in East Asia was founded here. It didn't open yet, but it opened more than 10 years later. But it opened down the street here, actually. But it was they started working on it in 1914. The year that the Panama Canal opened was the year that they started working on the biggest cathedral in East Asia, here in Nagasaki, right? Now imagine how all this looks later. Christians had been here. There's the hidden Christians that all the Christians know about. And the Christians know about the 26 martyrs. There's a big monument to them down the road. This is a small town, actually. It's not it's not a small town. Let's say it's a small city, or it's a big town, right? And it's not really, it's really a quiet, large town is what it really is. And it's a port city. But the Christians know this as the Christians came and they were bringing Christianity and that sort of thing, but they missed the part where the Portuguese were kidnapping Japanese, and where the Portuguese sponsored a rebellion, and you know what I mean? They missed that part, right? And so, because that part is elided from our version of the history. And so when the Japanese killed the 26 martyrs, which a lot of Christians know about, and then immediately the Pope is like, yeah, they're saints and that sort of thing. And then the professional victims are predators thing holds true here, right? But the Dutch actually, they wanted to trade here, and they didn't want the competition for it from the Portuguese, so they helped the Japanese knock out the Portuguese and blah blah blah, right? But at the end of the day, so the biggest church in East Asia was right down the road, right? And that is just a few hundred meters from the hypocenter of the atomic bomb. So think about how this looks, right? So, I mean, the biggest Christian city in Japan, where I'm at right now, there's a lot of churches here. We hit it with an atomic bomb. And so that was a quite curious thing, you know, where we had the biggest Christian city in Japan here, and then we nuked it. That's quite mysterious, isn't it? Now, there was a primary target, which was occluded by smoke that day, the day of the bombing, because of previous fire bombings. There was smoke over the target area, so that diverted, and because this was actually the primary target on the first bomb was Hiroshima, and then and if this would have been the tertiary target that day, the third target, but then Hiroshima was hit, and then so the secondary, so for the second bomb, they were going to hit another area that was occluded by smoke that day, so they diverted here, and the bomb detonated very close to the church. So if you go actually to the museum, I'm going somewhere very interesting with this. So if you go to the atomic bomb peace museum now, and I say peace in air quotes for a specific reason, and I'll explain. If you go to that peace museum, Masako and I have been to it 3 days in about the last week or so. There's actually a lot of parts of the old church there and that sort of thing. And but the Chinese are clearly either running or heavily influencing that museum, right? So the Chinese, we went to an event. We went to 2 events in the last week at this the Japanese Atomic Bomb Peace Museum, which is just near where the Hypocenter was. The Hypocenter is the place. Oh, Misako handed me this. This is a handout they had of it. Yeah, I'll hold it up if people want to screenshot it. Let me hold it back so it's focused. But this is an event that they held there twice this week. Notice the Chinese flag in the middle. Japanese flag, Korean flag, but the Chinese flag is in the middle. So they had this event twice this week with all these entertainers, and we went to it both times. And this museum, the people were greeting each other with Kokyo Zero, which means borders zero. Kokyo Zero. So they're like, hello. Instead of saying, hello in Japanese, they were saying Kokyo Zero. When they were saying goodbye, it was Kokyo Zero, borders zero, right? When they were, thank you was Kokyo Zero. You're welcome was Kokyo Zero. They just kept saying that dozens of times on both nights. Both nights went for 2.5 hours. So we were there for a total of, I would say actually 5 hours between the 2 nights, right? And it was just Kokyo Zero, not Coke Zero, but Kokyo Zero, right? It was borders zero. Now imagine that. This is Nagasaki, right? And this is the place where the only foreigners that were allowed to trade with Japan were here in Nagasaki at Dejima, right? Ultimately at Dejima, which is a tiny little man-made island that you literally can shoot an arrow over any dimension and hit the other edge, right? And I mean with a compound bow, and easily, and it's very tiny, and so now it's literally at the atomic bomb memorial. You've got the Chinese holding events about Kokyo zero borders zero, right? And so we made video of the entire event, and it was fascinating. And a couple nights ago at that event, we were with a professor, he's an expert on these sorts of things. He reads the old Chinese characters. He's a Japanese professor. Ishii is his name. He's quite famous here in Japan. We had dinner with him a couple nights last week, and we're going to have dinner with him tonight again. But he went to that event with us, and what's even more interesting is I sent a little video of this to Mike Adams in Austin, near Austin, in Texas, a couple nights ago, right after we got back, and I said, "Look at this event we were just at." And Mike said, I was just at one of those events in Austin, like within 12 hours, right? He was like, it's like, at the same night we were at it, except, we're 12 hours difference. He literally just went to the same event, right? A very similar event in Austin. I have studied Chinese information war for years. I've written 3 books about it. They're only in Japanese, unfortunately. I wrote them in English, but only translated into Japanese. They're not in English. They're not translated to. I didn't publish them in English, right? Even though I wrote them in English. But the reason why is because I've been working to wake up Japan for many years, because Japan is our #1 ally in the world. Period. It's not Israel. It's not London. It is Japan. This is so important. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be here, right? I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in Panama all the time if it weren't so important. I love Texas, but I wouldn't be in Texas all the time if it weren't so important geopolitically. And I'm often in places like Netherlands. Why am I in Netherlands? Because if I were going to take Europe, I would take Netherlands, right? That would be one of the key places to take. And I'd take Belgium too. And I'd take out Nord Stream, which Masako and I successfully predicted many times in many interviews and in writing many times that something was going to happen to Nord Stream. And then it happened, right? In fact, we had been in Germany at the BASF plant 14 days before Nord Stream was attacked, right? How do we predict all these things so successfully? Like the screwworms. We predicted that screwworms would make it back to Texas 4 years ago, many, many times. We predicted that over and over and over in interviews, and people were like, what are screwworms? I'm like, you'll find out soon enough. But I suggest you start researching now, because they're going to get back to the United States along with MDR-TB, multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, which did, and a lot of other things, like the Darien Gap is going to open up to mass invasion of the United States, which it did. And we spent I spent about a year in Panama, over a year in Panama, researching this, right? Since the time Biden was installed. That's why I'm in these places. I'm not in Nagasaki because it's a nice place, although it is. It's a very nice place. I suggest everybody come here. But that's not why we're here, right? And that's not why we're in Japan. We're in Japan because Japan is vital terrain. I've been all over China, Thailand as well. You see, I used to have an office in Thailand. Despite that I've been around the world, 99 countries, most of my life downrange, as soon as I opened an office in Thailand, you had the experts saying, you're in Thailand because of the girls and all this stuff. I'm like, hey, dude, I just left 2 years of Afghanistan. Was I there for the girls? I just left 2 years of Iraq. I wasn't there for the bars and the girls, right? That was 4 years in those wars. I wasn't there for a party. I was not in Thailand for a party, right? Thailand is the hyphen in Indo-Pacific security. It is very important. And you see the conflict unfolding in Thailand right now is about routes and resources. That's why we're here. That's why we're in Netherlands. That's how we were able to predict the screwworms and the Nord Stream and the Groningen gas field being cut, and a long list of other things like Babe Ruth, right? We keep hitting these predictions, unlikely predictions, way in advance. The Thai thing is not about the Prévert Temple or that 1907 French map from the Cambodian Thai border. It's not about any of that nonsense. It is about routes and resources, right? Now, old maps often lead to fights. Trust me on that. I got a bunch of old maps, and I watch map warfare and museum warfare intensely. Masako and I have been to 7 museums in the last 10 days, probably, right? We go to museums all over the world. We study maps. We know how important maps are in warfare. But ultimately, it's about routes and resources. Thus, we are in Nagasaki, right, for almost 2 weeks now, right? Just studying this little aspect of the larger picture, just like we spent about more than a year in Panama, and a lot of time, months in Netherlands, and then more months around Europe just since Biden was installed, right? And so it's about routes and resources. So you have the people, that so-called analysts, who are now talking about the Prévert Temple and the 1907 French map between Cambodia and Thailand. And all of their predictions are like feathers in the wind. They're irrelevant. They're not going to, they will not be predictive unless in a roll of the dice they get things right. They're counting how many F-16s Thailand has versus the tiny, tiny Air Force that Cambodia has. I'm very familiar with the Thai military. I've been out to a lot of their training with them. Very familiar. I've been all over. I've been to every province in Thailand. That's a big country. It took a long time, right? If you web search my name, you'll see me flying around with the prime minister, right? I'm very familiar with Thailand. I'm very familiar with Asia. I've spent about 20 years in Asia, right? In 25 Asian countries. I've been all over this place, right? China, Nepal, Tibet. I'm cognizant of what's happening here. It's not about that temple, and it's about routes and resources. China is building a canal from the Mekong River through Cambodia to the Gulf of Thailand. In old days, it was called the Gulf of Siam, right? It's called the Funan Techo Canal. Funan is the old name China had for Cambodia. Coincidence? Maybe. China doesn't do things coincidentally. And so, but they also want to have the Kra Isthmus. China wants the Kra Isthmus in Thailand. The Kra Isthmus is that sort of elephant trunk between, for those who have a map, and I have a whole library of maps in my head, right? So I can lose people when I'm talking, so I have to be careful. So if you have a map or a globe or something, look at it, please, when I'm talking. Or if this is recorded, stop the recording and find a map, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But the Kra Isthmus, Kra Isthmus, Kra means turtle in Thai language, is that elephant trunk between Thailand and Malaysia, and to the west side is obviously Myanmar. I say obviously, I've got these map sheets in my head, so I'm sorry, because I'm actually seeing them as I'm talking. And so, because I've been to all these places and I've looked at the maps just for years. And so, but that isthmus, if there's a land bridge or a canal across it, and people have wanted to do that for centuries, that will allow China and others to circumvent the Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca, the Strait of Malacca, 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 Malacca. Remember Malacca? That's where the Portuguese had. Actually, they knocked out one of the kings up there because he was an opium addict, but that was centuries ago. When they were trading here in Japan, in Nagasaki, the Portuguese had an outpost there in Malacca, and also Goa over in India. But Strait of Malacca, of the 7 or arguably 8 major naval choke points in the world, Strait of Malacca, right by Malacca, that's why it's called the Strait of Malacca, is the most important for Asia by far. If the Strait of Malacca is closed, you'll end up seeing if it was closed for like 6 months, you'll end up seeing famines in Asia, right? It's really important. It's very important for China. It's very important for everybody in Asia, and it's important for us, right? So Strait of Malacca is one of the, let's just talk about 7 now, right? Strait of Malacca. Panama Canal is number 1 for us, right? It's that important for us, right? Strait of Malacca for Asia, right? And us, it's important. But Panama Canal is really important. That's why I spend so much time down there. I've taken 60 or 70 people down to Panama in the last 4 years. Brett Weinstein, Chris Martinson, Laura Logan, long list. Congressmen, 60 or 70 people. Epoch Times, took them all, right? I want them to see how important this is, right? That's Suez Canal. Suez Canal opened in 1869. Panama Canal opened in 1914. These are really important. The reason that Israel is where it's at now is not to return Jews to the Holy Land. It is because of the Suez Canal, full stop. I know a lot of people will go, no, that's not why it's there. And it's because they're brainwashed. And most of the people watching this, including me for many years, thought that it was about the Holy Land. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is vital. It opened in 1869, right? There is the Bab al-Mandeb, which the Houthis have cleverly closed, right? So we got Panama Canal, Suez Canal, Bab al-Mandeb, right? And the Houthis have closed that with their sandals and rockets, right? The Houthis are serious people, right? They're not, obviously, they've turned out to be nobody to be trifled with. You've also got over by Spain and Morocco, and I've gone over to look at this very interestingly from the Spain and Morocco side, is the Strait of Gibraltar, of course, right? And then you've got the Bosphorus, the Turkish Straits. Then you've got the big one right now, the Strait of Hormuz. I would not doubt that the Strait of Hormuz ends up being closed and blamed on Iran. I don't know if this is going to happen, of course, but I can see the information war being built up for a closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And now, of course, we would never want to do that ourselves, just like the Nord Stream. We wouldn't want to claim that we destroyed Nord Stream. That would be insane to claim that, because that would be an attack on NATO, right? That would be an attack, and we're the main NATO member, right? So that would actually activate Article 5, all for one and one for all of NATO, right? If anybody attacks a NATO country, then we're supposed to all come in and attack that country. Well, that's inconvenient. We attacked Germany when we attacked Nord Stream, right? Nord Stream between Russia and Germany. That means we would activate Article 5 against ourselves, right? So, but many people have asked me who actually destroyed Nord Stream, and that was either United States or space aliens, right? It was one of those. It was U.S. or space aliens attacked Nord Stream. That's it. I mean, we probably used proxies, maybe, I don't know, but it was us, right? Or maybe space aliens. We attacked it, right? And for many reasons, for those who are students of Mackinder and that sort of thing, that's a whole rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, these naval chokeholds, Panama Canal, Strait of Gibraltar, Danish Straits, the Strait of the Turkish Straits, Bosphorus, right? Suez Canal. That's why Israel is there, right? The Strait of the Bab al Mandeb, the Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, and then of course Cape Horn, right? And I'm sorry, not Cape Horn, but the Cape of Good Hope, right? And around Africa. And so it's easy for, by the way, people get Cape Horn mixed up on the tip of South Africa with South America with the Horn of Africa. You get that mixed up because it's the names are confusing. But the Horn of Africa is not the tip of Africa. That's the Horn up, by Somalia, right? More in the Indian Ocean area. So these names can get confusing sometimes. But at the end of the day, these major chokeholds, if for those who have read Alfred Mahan, the history of sea power, the influence of sea power on history, every naval officer worth his salt has read that book and is very familiar with it. It's 1890. It was written before actually the Panama Canal was opened. Mahan was down in Panama, but this is what this is all about. Not to go into all these rabbit holes, but what I'm saying is you can never understand what's happening unless you spend a lot of time. And I don't mean weeks, I don't mean months. This will take actually years, right? You're not going to become a doctor in 6 months. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to become a doctor by reading Foreign Affairs and the Wall Street Journal and all this stuff. You're just not going to do it, right? It takes years of study. It is extremely helpful if you travel the world and look at these places. Physically go, right? It makes a huge difference. You need to physically go, and you need to read a lot of old books. It's very important. That's why our best military officers, like General Grant, they love old books, right? That's why I spend so much time with you should see my library. I'm just doing what the successful people have done, emulate them, and it's turned out to work, right? You spend a lot of time in old books, old maps, learning about routes and resources. It's not about the Holy Land for the Jews. It's about routes and resources. It's not about that temple on the Thai-Cambodian border. That's for the people who don't have any idea at all what's going on. You can get them to fight about that temple, right? It's about routes and resources. When we were here trying to open up Japan, which we finally did, it was about routes and resources. It wasn't about women's rights in Afghanistan or in Japan or any of that nonsense, or in China. It was about money. It was about control of global money system, routes and resources, right? Getting Japan and China to fight each other, which we and others successfully did. Routes and resources. And the reason we had bases all over the world, and the reason now that China owns ports or operates ports all over the world, but the U.S. doesn't, routes and resources, like these two ports on both ends of the Panama Canal, the Hutchison ports, which I'm at all the time. They control those two ports. They control those two ports on the edges of the Panama Canal. They don't control the Panama Canal. They control those two ports, right? They don't own them. They lease them. And U.S. has said, Trump has said, we're taking those back. Okay, nonsense, didn't happen, right? Now, Americans all seem to believe now that America has taken back the Panama, which I don't know where they come up with this stuff. They just don't study it all. We haven't taken anything back, right? Now, it's true that the Secretary of State was there and the Secretary of Defense was there. We stayed in the same hotel at the same time, right? It's true that the director of CIA was recently there, or that was a few months ago now, and I was there when he was there. But that was not in the news at all, to my knowledge, right? Ratcliffe was there, and so Department of Homeland Security chief was there. They all were there. All the people are coming to the table in Panama. It's going to end up in a big conflict. That much is clear. But it's about routes and resources. Panama Canal and the route that's being built, electrical lines are being built now between Panama and Colombia. Routes and resources. A road is being built to Colombia, which everybody denies. I assure you it's being built. I found it, right? Personally, I found it, right? I was down there all the time looking for it. Then when I come up and I started saying that, people are like, you're wrong about that. That's a false report. And I'm like, hello, here's where it's at on the map. Fly to Panama, rent a car at the airport, take a left on the highway, drive to the end of the highway. It's right there, right? It's that simple. You can find it in 24 hours. Wherever you're at in the world, you can be there in 24 hours. Or if you're in Japan, it might take 36 if you have to connect. But you can be to the bridges, to the two bridges that are big. If you're in the United States, you can be there in 24 hours. I don't care where you're. I don't care if you're in Alaska or if you're in the backwoods of Maine or you're on Key West. You can be to where they're building that road to Colombia. You can be there tomorrow, right? You can be there tomorrow. You just land at Tucumán Airport, rent a car, take a left on Highway 1, go to the end of the road, ask people where the bridge is being built. They'll show you. You just passed it by about 800 meters. You'll go back and find it, and then you can go look at the bridge being built, and then you can walk several miles and see the other bridge out in the jungle, right? And they're building electrical lines down there, and they're building other bridges. It's clearly being gapped. Routes and resources. Panama is one of the most important places on planet Earth that Americans forgot about, right? It's going to end up being a war zone. The Chinese are really working hard to take it, and they're succeeding, actually. Despite the news in America that America took Panama back, it just didn't happen, period. Full stop, right? And I'm there all the time. I've got a network of people down there, government, Indians, the whole works, right? Nothing's going to happen in Panama without me noticing instantly, right? So it's not happening. But so what I'm getting to is the Chinese are working on these routes and resources. Now we've gone in, all the globalism is still ongoing. We exported our jobs over to China, and our manufacturing and our resources are now, they're in their hands, right? Period. Full stop. America is not the America it used to be. We don't have the shipbuilding capacity that we used to have, right? Our borders are wide open, despite what people think. They're like, well, Trump closed the borders. I'm like, did he? Did he really? Let's be real. He's giving out visas, right? He's giving out visas. So they're not rushing over the border anymore. They're just getting the visas, right? So let's be realistic about what's really happening, right? Tom Homan called me up last year. He wanted to go to the Darien Gap. And now, one of his right-hand men is a good friend of mine, Todd Binsman. I know Todd well. We were just in Texas together recently, right? Going over to doing things. And what I'm getting to is the border is not closed. It's just changed the way it looks. For instance, the IOM and all these other people that caused this International Organization for Migration, or a UN branch, They're still operational. I just had somebody in front of their headquarters 3 days ago photographing their in Panama. I mean, they're still operating. I'm there all the time. There, nothing has closed down. The architecture for the invasion, the plumbing is all still there, right? And it's still on. The invasions are still happening here in Japan. And people keep saying to me, no, Japan would never do that. You're wrong. I'm like, okay, whatever. Get on an airplane and come look, right? Go to a place called Kawaguchi. The Japanese call it Kawaguchi stand. Yesterday, Masako and I had lunch with somebody who's helping Afghans and Kurds and others come in, and people from Africa, right? She actually helps them. She tries to teach them Japanese. She said they get in fights all the time, right? They fight each other, right? And like the Afghans fight each other. I'm like, that's what they do. I spent 2 years in Afghanistan. Actually, I love the Afghans. I got along great with them, but they shouldn't be here. I can tell you that much. Japan was right about, but now, again, let's rewind to what I said earlier. Just down the road from me is everything, because this is a small area. So everything I say about Nagasaki is just down the road from me. This is very small. You can look it up on the map and see. And is the Atomic Bomb Peace Museum, which is clearly operated or heavily influenced by Chinese. I've been to Chinese museums all over China. I can smell it, right? And the first thing that Chinese always use is peace. Peace means surrender, because if you look at the larger architecture of their information war, when they're always saying peace, peace, this, peace, that. And but it's really about surrender. But you go to the museums in China, like at Nanjing, and it's all about hatred against Japanese and Americans. They want all the Chinese kids to hate Americans and Japanese, right? And you should see, like, if you go to Nanjing, if there's anybody watching this in China, which I doubt, because this will be way behind the firewall, this will be stopped at the Great Wall, right? And but if you're traveling to China and you happen to get over to Nanjing, go to that museum, and you'll see probably busloads full of kids coming, and the tour guides all have those flags, like the blue flag and the green flag and the orange flag, whatever, for the different groups of kids coming. When I went to Nanjing Museum, it was hundreds and hundreds of kids at a minimum, maybe, I don't know, maybe over 1,000 is probably realistic. I think it's very realistic, actually. And I was the only white person there, right? And but the museum was all about creating hatred, especially towards Japanese. Now, it had the same feeling as the museum here in Japan, which is not about, they're not going to, Japanese aren't, in general, are not anti-American actually at all. There are some, of course, but there's more anti-Americans in America than anywhere actually. But even here in Nagasaki, like, I don't sense any anti-Americanism here. We've been there for almost a couple of weeks, right? And it seems they're extremely friendly to me. But when we were we've been to that Peace Museum here 3 times already in the last couple of weeks, right? And mostly in the last 10 days, and it's the same thing. The leaders have, busloads of students show up, just like they do in Chinese museums, and they got the flags, and all the students follow them. They give them a tour of the museum, right? This is the same exact thing I see the Chinese do at their museums with their kids when they're out. But in China, they're creating hatred. Here, they're creating surrender, right? Japan is all being brainwashed that you need to have open borders or you're a bad person, right? Japanese used to save in gold, right? They used to save in gold and silver. They've been brainwashed, like Americans, that virtuous people save in fiat. You have a big savings account with where you get your 3% or whatever, inflation outpacing that, and you save in fiat, right? The Japanese used to save in gold. Now the number of Japanese who save in gold is probably fewer than Americans, right? I'm going somewhere with this. This is part of the larger unrestricted warfare infrastructure or architecture, right? Chinese save in gold, Thais, Cambodians, Lao, Indians, the people in Myanmar, the various groups, every group there that I know, like the Karens and the Karenis, they all save in gold, right? But not Japan. Japan's been brainwashed away from that, and Americans too, right? And so what I'm getting to with this is you can brainwash people to do anything, like take the jab. You can brainwash 1 billion people to take the jab, and now people are dying everywhere, and there's still people that support the guy that pushed the jab. Who was that, right? Who was that guy that pushed the jab so hard that his people fooled him, right? Okay, whatever. Trump, right? Uh, the brainwashing is intense. So a lot of Japanese, who for whatever reason, a lot of them love the United Nations, are brainwashed, are being brainwashed now to open their doors. Right? You go to any convenience store here, and they're run by usually South Asians, right? Usually like Indians, Bangladeshis. Now they're trying to bring in 100,000 Bangladeshis here. I've been to Bangladesh, researching. What was I researching? Routes and resources, right? Bangladesh. So I was in Bangladesh and I was treated very well. They tend to be very pro-American, but weirdly, you might not imagine that. But I can tell you where Bangladeshis don't need to be, and that's Japan. It is just not compatible. Some fish don't mix well in the same aquarium. This is a very sophisticated country, Japan. All the stuff that's here, all the electrical, all the incredible infrastructure of Japan. People from these other cultures, they are not going to be able to run that. Period. I spent most of my life overseas, right? 99 countries I've been in. Most of my life I've been out of the United States, and I've been all over the United States too, right? Except for Alaska. For some reason, I'm saving that for last. But I've been all over the United States. Went to school in California, went to school in Florida, had a business in Ohio and another one in North Carolina, right? I've been all over. I've been stationed in California, stationed in North Carolina, stationed in Georgia, right? Stationed in Massachusetts. I have seen our country, and I have seen a lot of the world, right? And I've learned a few things. One is, some fish don't mix well in the same aquarium, right? And Bangladeshis ain't going to mix well in Japan, right? And nor are Indians, nor are not in large numbers. And I'm not talking about the high class Indians. I'm talking about bringing in millions of people that are. I've been to India. I spent about a year in India, right? I'm telling you, it's not going to work. And the Indians will tell you that, right? Because remember, India is very complex. There's different, it's not like India is India. Japan is mostly Japan, right? But India has thousands of languages and dialects. It's very complex. It's amazingly complex, as is China. China is not China. China is like the Soviet Union of China. It's a bunch of other places that have been hobbled together and are called China, like Tibet. I've been to Tibet. Tibet is Tibet. Tibet's not China, but China will say it's Tibet. Or Hong Kong. I was there for probably spent about a year in Hong Kong. I spent 7 months there, and the last time I got kicked out in 2020 by the communists. But the Hong Kongers, they'll be the first ones to tell you, we're not Chinese. We're Hong Kongers, right? We speak Cantonese. We don't speak Mandarin. Now they're trying to force us to speak Mandarin, right? China took Hong Kong. Or the Taiwanese. The Taiwanese will tell you, except for the ones who came after, the Civil War in China, they're Taiwanese. They've been there for over 400 years, right? They've been there for over 400 years, back in the old days, right? They are not Chinese. They speak Mandarin like the Han Chinese do. The leaders of the Communist Party speak Mandarin, but the people in Hong Kong speak Cantonese, right? That's their base. They look different to me. The people in Hong Kong, I can tell them apart. I've been in Asia so long, I can say that guy's probably from northern China, right? I can't tell everybody apart, of course, but the differences are quite clear to me in some instances. Like the Hong Kongers don't even look like the Han Chinese or the northern Chinese. They're different people. They speak a different language. We call all these things Chinese, but what's Chinese? That's like calling European a language, right? European is not a language. Foreign is not a language, right? It's like Cantonese is a language. Fujianese is a language. Mandarin is a language with dialects, right? There's no Chinese is not a language. Mostly we call anything that those people that look like that speak, we call it Chinese, right? That'd be like calling everybody that speaks, every white person speaks European, right? They're just different cultures. Europeans are not all French and they're not all German. It's the same with China. It's the same with India. It's many, many, many different fish in a big aquarium called India or called China or now, called America as well. I've been all over the United States. It's very diverse. Anthropologically very diverse, right? And not using the diversity word that's used in information war. I mean, it is a coral reef of peoples, right? And like even Texas is divided up into many different. You have to you have to spend a lot of time in Texas, and you'll see. But at the end of the day, China is ascendant. That's clear. They're not invincible. They're not omniscient, but they want to be both. That's what globalists always want to be. Portuguese did it for a long time. They had a good run. The Portuguese were the non-bond, the non-bond, the southern barbarians, as they called them here in Japan or in Nagasaki. They were the first very serious globalists. Were the Portuguese, and they were kind of the last to kind of fall off on that from the European powers, right, in 1999. But now the colonialists, the big colonialists, are clearly China. China. Big time China, right? And also Zionists are making their go at it, but they don't have the numbers, and the Indians as well. They do have the numbers, but the Indians are so diverse, they're going to fight each other like crazy. Chinese will too. When I say Chinese, I'm talking about Chinese fight each other like crazy, and as do Indians, like the Sikhs and the Hindus are fighting up in Canada now and that sort of thing, right? Just like they do back in India. Remember when Europeans came to the Americas, we brought our wars with us, right? That's the Revolutionary Wars, 1812, and our original revolutionary. We brought all of our wars with us, and that's what happens. That's why this Japanese lady we had lunch with yesterday, who teaches Japanese, and she works to help these people come in from the Kurdish and the Afghans and whatnot. And she said they're fighting each other. I said they're going to, because the Pashtuns are going to fight the Baluchs. The Pashtuns are going to fight the Hazars. The Pashtuns are going to fight the Pashtuns. The Tajiks are going to fight the Pashtuns, and the Tajiks are going to fight the Hazars. And the Baluchs are going to fight the Hazars, right? I've been all over Afghanistan. I study anthropological warfare. It's one of the biggest forms of warfare that nobody seems to know about, except for the people that do it. Those are like the people that have the magic sauce and that know all about anthropological warfare, while all the other, it's like the people that are really good at math, just taking advantage of those who never study math. It's like the magic sauce, the temple changers. And so anyway, I'm sorry, I could go on for hours. You gave me the microphone the whole time, and you haven't even asked a question. So I'll be quiet.
Oh no, I wanted you to share your message as I do with most of my guests, Michael. Um, I watched the video you did with, I believe it was Ivor Cummins, which I thought was fascinating. I saw that was a recent one, and he covered a lot of different topics that I found were intriguing. I figured it kind of dovetails, ties into just things going on, globally. I know you mentioned about these various oligarchs and how they're using, and I'm looking at referencing my notes here, that it's a consortium, it's a multi-spectrum war that is going on. I know you mentioned, information. Oh gosh, I'm blanking out here. I have it down here. Yeah, consolidate. Yep, big picture: consolidating power, deindustrializing the West, reduce global population, undermine national sovereignty. Those are some of my notes here that I have. Can you talk about these elites? Also, how would you define the existing power structure behind NATO or behind BIS, things of that nature?
Right. I did that interview with Ivor over in Argentina about 9 months ago, right? When was it? November, maybe, of 2024, or maybe December. We were both speaking at an event in Buenos Aires, and I spoke at the event, and I mentioned that, and Ivor spoke as well, and I mentioned Ivor was the only Irishman in the audience. Well, he was a speaker too, but and I was mentioning how the globalists are taking Ireland, and everybody looks at Ivor because Ivor's quite famous, and Ivor, although he lives in Ireland, was really not cognizant of that, and but I think that the fact pattern that I laid out was quite persuasive to him, because he did start to pay attention, and then we went to lunch together and dinner a couple times and that sort of thing, and Masako and I had gone to Ireland about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, right? Because we saw that Ireland was being taken, right? We had been over in Netherlands and Germany and Belgium and all those places, right? Many, many. And then we headed over to Ireland because that was clearly being taken. And so we were given that speech down in Buenos Aires. And so then Ivor asked to interview me, which we did at Doug Casey's house. Doug Casey, the famous gold man that everybody knows about. I was staying at his house, and at his place in Buenos Aires, and he's got a beautiful old library, of course, old maps. That's the way Doug rolls. He's super smart. He's got a Substack, which is be very wise to follow, by the way. Him and Matt Smith. Matt Smith lives in Uruguay, and Doug lives in Uruguay and in Argentina. And so Ivor asked for an interview, and we did it in Doug's library, Doug Casey's library, and Ivor didn't run the interview, and he didn't run it, and he didn't run it because I had said some things that he thought would get him demonetized and brutally attacked. Which, for instance, if you see what Ivor says at the beginning, he finally ran it last week, right, or 2 weeks ago, maybe, and I've been busy, so I lose track of time. But he mentioned that our interview have turned out to be prophetic, even though that was only like 9 months ago. And then then we talked on the phone about a week ago, and he's like, "Wow, your what you said on our video that I didn't publish, which he now has done, has turned out to be prophetic." And it was actually not hard. How was I so prophetic about Iraq and Afghanistan and Ukraine? And it's not really prophetic. Often I'm telling you what's already happening. Like when I predicted the Iraq Civil War. I wasn't predicting the Iraq Civil War. I was in the middle of it, right? So I never predicted it. I was physically seeing it every day. The Iraqis were mostly fighting the Iraqis, and they were fighting us too. We were all taking huge amounts of casualties, thousands and thousands, and so but they were fighting each other. So after I had said the Iraq was in a civil war, a year and a half later, people are like, "Yay, Iraq is in a civil war. We're gonna," I think it was like NBC or somebody said, like, we're officially saying Iraq is in a civil war now. I'm like, okay, a year and a half later, which is a big deal. You have to accurately diagnose the type of war that it is so that you know how to treat it, right? You have to know what you're looking at. You're a doctor of war here, right? You have to go, "Hey, he's got a headache. Why does he have the headache?" Well, he got, hit in the head with a chainsaw. That's his problem, right? Or he maybe drank too much the night before. Stop drinking, right? Remember, intoxicants are the number one weapon in psychological operations. That's huge, right? But in any case, you have to successfully diagnose what it is. But it was unhappy days to call it civil war because the American oligarchical system that was then in charge, led by Bush, or nominally led by Bush as president, was they didn't want to call it a civil war because they thought Americans would lose the will to keep fighting it. And I'm like, well, whatever. You need to still do whatever you're going to do to persuade them to keep fighting it if that's what you want to do. But you have to successfully diagnose this as a civil war and treat it as a huge component of this is civil war. Not all of it, but a huge component is civil war. Period. Full stop. And if you don't treat that civil war by separating Sunni and Shia in certain areas and doing certain things, but they didn't want to treat it as a civil war because then everybody would notice. So what happened? The civil war grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. But as soon as they started saying, "Yep, it's a civil war," right? Then they started treating it as a civil war, and we were able to ameliorate that civil war almost immediately, very quickly. We were able to put a kibosh on it, right? And it really slowed the civil war. Now, of course, at the end of the day, we left Iraq, and Iraq did what Iraq did. ISIS blew up and that sort of thing, and Iraq isn't the chaos it is today. So at the end of the day, though, the unwillingness to diagnose things what they obviously are because it's politically inconvenient or whatever, I'm just not in that business. So in any case, when it came to that interview I did with Ivor Cummins down at Doug Casey's library in Buenos Aires, and like in maybe November of 2024, and Ivor just published it. I was saying things that were not prophetic. I was saying things that were true that people either could not see or did not want to see. because you'll never see something that you really don't want to see. That's the way humans are, right? If I really don't want to see that, most people have a magical way of saying monkey don't see, right? And so what they don't want to see is that Trump is a Zionist. And I said that straight up on the interview, right? And if you're not seeing the obvious that Trump is a Zionist and he self-identifies as a Zionist, right? Right? Then you're going to always get these predictions wrong. Like the Thai temple over on the Cambodian or Thai Cambodian temple dispute, let's say, over that 1907 map allegedly, is actually about routes and resources, right? It's not about that temple. It's not about that other map in the Gulf of Siam about the island that Thailand and Cambodia are fighting about, this old temple that was found, this old map that was found in the French military library. It's not about all that stuff. It's about energy in the Gulf of Siam and routes and resources. Why is Trump a Zionist? You have to diagnose accurately what is actually going on, or all predictions are feathers in the wind and they're irrelevant. That's why I won't even pay attention to probably 98, 99% of the analysts that I listen to. Almost none will I even pay attention to, except unless they have some details that I find it, because mostly it's mud. Mostly it's groupthink, and I'm looking for flakes of gold. I need 24 karat flakes of gold to help me assemble a puzzle of what's going on, right? What's really going on. I want information. I want pieces of the puzzle that I can assemble that will tell me screwworms will make it back to the United States. And Masako is right here, and I successfully predicted that 4 years ago. And now it's all in the news. Successfully predicted Nord Stream way in advance, many times. Went to Germany researching it, right? Saying it in advance. Boom, Nord Stream's blown up, right? And we nailed it. Nailed that Panama was going to be it. How do we do this? Because we're cutting through all the bullshit. We don't have time for it, right? We have to go where the action is. We have to read the right books, be with the right people in the right places, feel it, smell it, see it. What is the nature of this thing? The nature of the thing with Trump. Now, people have often said that you used to support Trump and then you turned against him. And I say, ceasefire, Rambo. You will not find any day of my life where I ever supported Trump, ever. Newt Gingrich called me up like 10 years ago, before the first election, trying to get support for Trump. I was at my office in Thailand, right? Why was I in Thailand? Routes and resources. Thailand is the hyphen in Indo-Pacific security. That's why I was in Thailand. Newt Gingrich called me up, wants support for Trump. I'm like, don't you have somebody else? I'm not going to vote for that Hillary thing, but that's not our guy. No way am I going to support Trump. It's just, and I never did. I never have. The best things you'll ever say is he seems to have a nice family. He hasn't started any wars. But that was back before he did get into the wars, right? So routes and resources. And who is Trump? He's a narcissist. You can spot yourself and you can spot your opposite very quickly, right? And I can spot him because Trump is my opposite. So he jumps off the page to me, right? He just jumps off. Why is he always doing that snake thing when he does his speeches? You knew I was a snake when you picked him up. Because he's telling you who he is. Because that's what those sorts of people do. They tell you who they are. Narcissistic psychopaths tell you who they are. They habitually do that. They have to do it. It's part of their brain, right? If you look up my name, Michael Yon, and a guy named John Rousseau, he is an arsonist. He's in prison. I don't know if he's still in prison, but he was a narcissist, right? And he did a lot of crime in Massachusetts. So the Massachusetts State Police asked me to come in and interview this guy because they thought he would talk with me, right? They thought he would talk with me because he's narcissistic. And a narcissist only wants to talk with people that are on their level. Those are the people that on their level, or they see as on their level or even above them, right? They have to, narcissists rarely see somebody they think is above them, right? But they want to talked with some. So the Massachusetts State Police built me up in this guy's eyes. I came over and talked with him with my video camera right here. So everything's legal, right? I'm holding my video. I'm holding my video camera just like I'm holding this book, The Pilgrim's Progress, by the way. And I picked it up in an old bookstore. So I'm holding the video camera right in front of me. He knows I'm doing it. Knows I'm doing it. John Rousseau admits to all these crimes on my video, right? And went to prison. So if you look up my name and John Rousseau, you'll see articles, how he ended up in prison based on my video, right? He was telling me into my camera. So, you know what I'm saying? He knew why I was there. And he told me, right? Trump is telling you who he is. He's doing it. You knew I was a snake when you picked me up. He is John Rousseau. I tracked down a cannibal in India. The guy was from Texas. His name was Gary Stevenson. Narcissistic. He told me on my video, told me things that could get him life in prison, right? Told me, right? And they will tell you who they are. It's no, and they might kill you. Gary Stevenson tried to kill me. Actually, he missed, but I mean, it was very close. But he tried to stab me. But at the end of the day, Trump is telling you who he is. He is the snake. He is a Zionist. I said that on the interview, that Trump is a Zionist, and he can be depended on. He's a narcissist. At his core, on a Pushka doll thing, is teeny tiny little core. He's a narcissist, right? So that's when you get down to the atomic structure. That's what he's going to be, right? And then he's a Zionist on the next shell. And then he's whatever you want him to be to send him money, right? And to be his supporter, vote for him, whatever. Go clap at his rallies. That's the next shell in the Pushka doll arrangement here, right? But at his core, he's a narcissist. At his core, he is that thing, right? And then he's a Zionist. And then he's these other things, right? And so you're looking at an outer shell. I'm looking at the atomic structure of what that thing is. I used to hunt alligators when I was a kid, and I know their behavior. I can catch them with my hands today. I can call them with my voice. Female gators will come to you, right? Narcissists have told me the strangest things, right? One went to prison for it. Others had other problems from it, right? Trump is telling you who he is, right? Straight up, right? And so when I said on Ivor Cummins' interview, he's a Zionist, and we're probably going to end up fighting Iran. I said that way back then. Boom. And we ended up fighting Iran. How did I predict that? Because I'm looking at the atomic structure. I don't have time to listen to the 99% of the people that think he's looking out for us. He's not. He didn't get fooled by Fauci. He did not get fooled by Fauci. He is committing genocide against Americans. Full stop. Full stop. Trump is committing genocide against Americans 100%, right? Is this not clear enough? He is doing it, right? He didn't get fooled by anybody. He is not fooled by Fauci. Fauci is a little doll, right? He's gone, right? And yet Trump continues because remember, the only cult people never see is the cult that they're in, right? I've studied cults for years. When I was in special forces, some of the old timers are like, you need to study cults and all these different things. And I'm like, why would I want to study cults? But turned out they were right. I ended up studying cults a lot. I've read stacks and stacks of books on cults. I've tracked many cults around the world. I infiltrated a cult and lived with them in California. I studied cults a lot, right? There is nothing that somebody in a cult will not do. Nothing. They will feed their children to crocodiles. They will throw their children off the steps, cut their heart out and throw them off the steps. They will give jabs into their children and put it on Instagram. That's what people in a cult will do. People in a cult will say, my master make me drink the red Kool-Aid and killed everybody, but somebody fooled him that, the Kool-Aid was poison, right? No, that's not, he fooled you. That's what happened because you're in a cult. If you're still supporting Trump, now there's the red pill, blue pill thing. Who did you want? Biden? That's the thing. It's called uniparty. They're the same thing. They're from the same architecture. It's the same thing. There is no air between them, right? This is a big game. This is a big movie. This is a huge movie, right? Much of this is enjoy the show Q stuff. It's a movie set, the fake assassination crap with the bloody ear, right? Listen, I've done more combat photography than anybody you'll probably ever meet in your entire lifetime. You probably won't even be able to find anybody off the top of your head that's done more combat photography than I have, right? And I'm not just saying that. You can find thousands of photos I shot from combat, videos, bullets snapping by me, people getting shot, dead, the whole works, right? The current commander of CENTCOM, Eric Carrilla, got shot right in front of me. Bam, hit 3 times while I'm shooting photos of him at 5 frames a second. And he's getting shot. Bam, 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 right in front of me, right? And I ended up having to fight that day because of these different things that happened. I have shot a lot of combat photography, and I was a Green Beret weapons specialist. I put more rounds downrange than most people have, right? There are people that put a lot more rounds downrange, but I'm quite familiar with combat photography. I'm quite familiar with sniper operations, incoming and outgoing, right? I mean, I was out with the British one time. You can see the sniper's taking a shot at a Taliban guy. I'm right beside him. He's letting me shoot. He actually moved over and I shot through his scope at one point with my camera, right? Right? So this is how much I've seen this stuff. When I saw that bullet trace photo, I'm like, bullshit. Something's wrong. Why? The camera that he shot with is right here. Let me grab it. This is the same camera, not the same lens. I have the same lens that the photographer was shooting with. It's a Sony Alpha 1. He was using a different lens, a 24 millimeter lens. I use the same camera. Why? Because that's the best camera in the world, right there. For that sort of photography, this is it. This is the #1 camera. The camera I'm shooting this video with is a, I would say, #2 camera, but it's better for shooting videos like this. And so this is the best camera in the world. If I were in combat, I would have this camera right now, right? If I were going to photograph that thing that day, that's what I would have. And Sony Alpha 1, right? Or they have a second model that just came out. And when I saw that, I'm like, how did he catch that bullet trace? That doesn't pass. Keep in mind my skill stack here. I've done years of combat, took a lot of photos. The current CENTCOM commander, you know, the guy that's bombing, you know, Iran and all that stuff, Eric Carrilla, got shot right in front of me, like this close, right? Very close, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of combat. I've seen a lot of bullets coming and going, right? And I saw that bullet trace, and I'm like, there's something wrong with this. So immediately, you know, became a big kerfluffle because I published that, right? But again, what I'm getting to is this is all a big movie, is what I'm getting to. Now, people lose their mind. The people that lose their mind and saying, "Oh, are you saying that was, you know, but it was real and blah 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 blah." They totally overlooked that the evidence was washed off of the roof where the alleged shooter was, and they'll say, "Are you saying people didn't get killed that day?" I never said that. I'm saying that bullet trace photo, that's bullshit, right? I'm not saying that the rest of it's fake, that they washed off all the evidence and all that, which they did. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying nobody got killed. They definitely got killed. Listen, these setups are normal. These movie sets are absolutely normal, right? Look at October 7th, the Israeli thing, right? With the hostages, right? October 7th. Listen, it took the Israeli Defense Forces, who are supposed to be the super dupers of the universe when it comes to fighting, Mossad, the best in the world, whatever. So how did they miss that attack was coming, and that party, why was that party right next to Gaza? I've been in that area. Why was that party there? Why was that there, right? That's a mystery. Why was it there, and why did it take the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, 7 or 8 hours to respond in force? That's an entire McDonald's shift, right? That's an entire McDonald's shift. It took them that long to respond. Listen, I've been on a lot of QRFs in combat as a war correspondent. It takes 4 minutes to get a cold Black Hawk off the ground, wheels up. So let's say the Black Hawk's just sitting there in the sun, and the QRF, the quick reaction force, they'll always be very close. They're usually just like, you know, 30 seconds from the helicopters normally. I've been in a lot of QRFs, right? So they'll just be sitting there playing their video games, reading their books, whatever. I've done a lot of this stuff. Alarm goes off. Rotors start turning. Everybody's strapped in. They're gone. Wheels up, 4 minutes. If it takes you 6 minutes to get your wheels off the ground, that commander needs to be fired, right? Period, right? We don't have time for that. At the end of the day, you don't want a fire department that takes 6 minutes when it should have taken 4. And you don't want an army and an intelligence apparatus that takes 7 or 8 hours, an entire McDonald's shift, when they should have been slinging lead in 20, 30 minutes, right? Maximum 30 minutes. Black Hawks go 180 knots. Israel is small, right? If I were a combat soldier and nearby and people are shooting up my neighborhood, or if I were a policeman, I would have taken whatever I had to go fight. That's what people would. Their QRF should have gone straight to the shooting and engaged in combat, right? Now, people have said they have to make a plan first. I'm like, you know what? You just need to go to the other room and be quiet. That's not how this stuff works. Here's how it works in special operations world, right? They're shooting at our people. Go, find, kill. Go, find, kill. If they shoot our helicopter down, bring another one. If they shoot that one down, bring 5 more. Keep coming, keep coming. Saturate and kill. Saturate, slow them down, block them in, kill them all, move to the next target. That's how it goes. If we lose men, throw a tourniquet on them, evac them, keep going. That's how this goes. That's how men fight. We're not playing, right? Coming to kill you. You're killing our people. But it took 7 or 8 hours, right? That was clear bullshit. Also, the IDF killed a lot of the Israelis, right? And then the hostages. Why are those hostages needed? Those hostages are needed as casus belli. Now, keep in mind, why is Israel even there? Why is Israel even there? It has nothing to do with a homeland for Jewish people. Speaking of which, Netanyahu, Meliakovsky is his actual name. He's from Poland, right? His name is Meliakovsky, the same name as Milei down in Argentina. Meliakovsky, they both have the same last name, Meliakovsky. That's not conspiracy theory. That is 100% fact, right? You say one bad thing about this, and Netanyahu says, that's anti-Semitic. I'm like, let me think. If you put a picture between me and Netanyahu side by side, he's whiter than I am, right? So, but say something bad about Meliakovsky. Oh, I'm sorry, Netanyahu, Meliakovsky. Say something bad about Meliakovsky, and he'll say that's anti-Semitic. He's white. He's not Jewish. He's not of any Jewish architecture at all, right? He's an atheist, right? He plays the part. That's what the Zionists do. The Zionists push Gadol shell. Remember, Zionism started in 1897. Theodore Herzl over in England, right? It started in 1897. It didn't start 2,000 years ago. It started in the year 1897, right? They started issuing bonds to create Palestine in 1899. How do I know this? Because I have one, right? I have one here in Japan that I bought in Panama. They actually have bonds that were issued in 1899. Zionist Party is a party like the Democrats or the Republicans or the Nazi Party. Actually, Zionists and Nazis work well together. They work closely together. Inconvenient truth here. Truth bomb. They did. And the Jews killed a lot of the Zionists because the Zionists are always representing themselves as Jews, right? They represent, and many Jews are Zionists. But nobody seems to know on the pie chart of who are Zionists, who's who in the zoo. Like, for instance, it appears, I think there's more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists, but I don't know if that's true or not, and nobody seems to know. But that's what it seems like. It seems like there's a lot more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists, and there are actually a lot of Muslim Zionists, and people are like, Muslim Zionists, that's impossible. It would be impossible, except that I've been out with them a lot, right? Kurdish people. Many of the Kurdish people are Zionists, and they're Muslims, right? And so, yeah, so it's like that. And many of the Zionists are atheists, like Brett Weinstein that I took down to the Darien Gap. He's Zionist atheist. He'll tell you 5 times a day that he's atheist, right? Because atheism is an actual cult. And by the way, you can be in concentric cults, or let's say embedded cults. You can be in more than one cult at the same time, right? You can be in the atheist cult and the Zionist cult. You can be, and it's that they're not mutually exclusive. Sometimes they can reinforce, but they are separate things, right? And so, and then they fuse into a syncretic, their own separate thing. But what I'm getting to is, there's probably even Hindu Zionists, but I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying that's how the world actually works. The one that I run around in, you just never know what's the next species you're going to run into. But but what I'm getting to is, Zionism has conflated itself with Judaism, but the real Jews are the ones that are the most anti-Zionist. And you can see the Zionist state of Israel. It's a Zionist state. It's Zionistan, right? Some people call it Zionistan, right? Like it's a stand, Zionistan. But it's, a lot of the people there are Europeans. A lot of the people, like Putin recently said in an interview maybe a month ago, he said that that Israel is basically a Russian-speaking state, because so many of the people in Israel came from Russia or former Soviet Union states. They speak Russian, right? But a lot of the people came from Poland. They didn't come. The actual hereditary Jews are pretty rare, actually, right? And one of the people that I work closely with, literally 7 days a week for years, fighting China, he's Orthodox Jew, and he's the only person that's authorized to post on my on my Twitter. So whenever you see JBS, a post from JBS on my Twitter, that's my friend Al Johnson. He's an Orthodox Jew. He hates Zionists, and they hate him. JBS is Jew behind the scenes. One time, Jew behind. One time, about 10 years ago, we were in Tokyo, and we were plotting on China on some stuff, and we're in this dimly lit place with leather seats, and he's smoking a cigar because he likes to smoke cigars. And I said at one point, you really are the Jew behind the scenes, right? So ever since then, he's been JBS, right? And I'm sort of the Scott Irish behind the scenes, right? But although I go in front of the scenes a lot, but a lot of the things we do are behind the scenes, and like taking people to Panama, 60 or 70 people, and getting them schooled up so they can fight better, right? But what I'm getting to is, the Zionism, the so-called Jewish state, the only reason it's there is because the Suez Canal opened in 1869, and then it became a point of contention. Suddenly it's like, hey, we need a reason to check this thing. Otherwise, somebody else is going to control the Suez Canal, Egypt, right? And so, the USS Liberty and all these things are all about routes and resources, right? Now you've got the energy off of Gaza. You've got huge energy. You've got the Ben Gurion Canal that they would like to build, the Indo-European corridor that would go through from Mumbai over to UAE and Saudi and Jordan and through Israel, through Gaza and Haifa, right? Those sorts of things. So it's routes and resources, right? It's not there. But if you want to raise billions of dollars in the United States to defend the God's chosen people, as I was raised to do, right? And for most of my life, I was a heavy supporter of Israel, actually. But it took a long time to study through and get yourself out of the IMAX that you're born into. We're all born into concentric IMAX movies, basically, right? And at some point you start cutting yourself through and going, it's not red pill or blue pill either, by the way. It's red pill or blue pill from the same hand. It's like AstraZeneca or Moderna, and it's like, hey, it's the same guy. I don't even know who he is, but I'm supposed to take one of these because he said, here, take one of these and have this water, right? Allegedly water, right? It's the iocane powder thing, right? Both cups are poison. And so what I'm getting to is that interview with Ivor Cummins. He didn't want to publish it because I was throwing some, truth napalm out on Trump, but it's all turned out to be accurate. Like that we would probably fight with Iran, and now look what's happening, right? I think it's kind of obvious. I mean, now Strait of Hormuz, I would not doubt. I'm saying this now, as I've been saying for quite a while. I would not doubt that we're going to see the Strait of Hormuz get closed. I don't know if it's going to happen, obviously, but it's on my mind a lot because if Strait of Hormuz is closed, That's big, right? That's going to have a direct and immediate effect here in Japan. Well, I mean, serious effect. It's going to have a direct, immediate effect on China as well, right? And it's going to have a direct, immediate effect across Europe and a lot of other people. A lot of their energy comes through there. The United States doesn't get as much of our energy through there, but our trading partners do, like Japan. And so, but when you look at the essence of the beings, these oligarchical structures that they're fighting, there's many of them, or they're fighting each other, and we are part of their, we're part of their, from our, everybody's at the center of the universe, right? Everything is the center of the universe, and every moment in time is the center of time type thing, right? For us, our problem set is these oligarchs that are all trying to kill us or control us. But they're fighting in between each other, and then we're just part of their problem set. Some of the oligarchs want to remove us from the equation, like for instance, the Samson, not the Samson thing that the Israelis will do, but the other thing where they will. What's their policy of killing their own people before letting them be taken hostage? But there are people in oligarchical systems that are close to us that are genociding us, right? They're taking us out of the equation, right? That's what's happening. They're genociding through jabs, through other methods. They're invading our countries with migrants who are actually invaders, and because they're taking us out of the equation. And they're taking the Europeans out, and they want to take the Japanese out, and they're working on it. Japanese are heavily jabbed. Dr. Yasufumi Murakami, who Masako is very good friends with, she works with them on this project. They've collected over 25 million records now of Japanese jabs, and more than 600,000 they believe are dead just here in Japan, right? More than 600,000 Japanese dead from the jab. They're taking us out of the equation, right? And so what's happening? What's happening is, if I were them, I would do certain things. I would let the screwworms get back to the United States. I would do all kinds of little things like that. They're additive pressures, right? I would cut Nord Stream. I would cut Groningen gas field. When I kept saying on interviews, I think I said it on Jordan Peterson when I was on with Ava Vlardingerbrook. I said, I think that they're going to shut, I think I said this on his show, they're going to close Groningen gas field. But later, a lot of people said, why would they do that? Think about it. It's the biggest gas field in Europe. And I'm like, think about it, right? On the Carver Matrix, if I were trying to destroy and deindustrialize Europe, I would cut Nord Stream. I would take out BASF at Ludwigshafen, which Misako and I visited twice. The second time we were there was 14 days before Nord Stream got hit. I would take out Groningen gas field, the main part. But I was saying that before it happened, right? And they did. They did. And people are like, how did you predict all these things? And I said, because look at the essence of the thing. They're telling you what they're going to do. It's on their websites. They say it in interviews, right? Depopulation. They talk about controlling the food supply. They talk, you will eat the bugs, right? They're telling you, like John Russo, who went to prison, like Gary the Cannibal, that I interviewed right on video many times. And they tell you, I'm the snake, is what Trump says. He's not saying, he's telling the story of the snake and getting struck by the snake. But what he's telling you is who he is, right? And look at Maliakovsky, the guy that changed his name to Netanyahu, right? His family changed their name. He's got a mounted syringe with the death jab that he keeps in his office. It's in the news, right? I mean, he's never denied it. It's mounted like a missile, like an arrow missile, right? It's mounted like a ICBM or something, right? He's got the missile. Have you seen that needle that he's got mounted in his office? There's Maliakovsky. He's got a needle. I published it like 100 times. He's got a needle in his office. He's got a syringe, the death jab syringe. I'm not calling it a vaccine because I study information war, and never call things by what they're not, right? Don't call it a vaccine. It's not a vaccine, period. They actually changed the definition of vaccine to say, no, it's a vaccine because we changed the definition, right? Okay, whatever. That's why I have old dictionaries, right? Literally. That's the actual reason. I read old books and I need old dictionaries, right? And so they changed these names on the fly on the internet, right? and at the end of the day, they changed the name of they weren't vaccines. They're literally weapons. They're literally weapons. So people go, okay, they were experimental vaccines. I'm like, okay, first of all, they weren't vaccines. If you're trying to find the truth, you have to start. You always must stick to the right words, right? And like, if you want to make water, you don't start with, say, I don't know, carbon and nitrogen. You're not going to make water out of carbon and nitrogen. You know, you're going to need some oxygen and you're going to need some hydrogen to make water, right? And you burn those together and you got rocket fuel and you got steam, right? And so you have to use the right words. So if you use wrong words like experimental vaccine, first of all, it's not a vaccine. You will never get water out of that. You'll never get it. It's never going to be water. Because you started, everything that follows is false. If you call the invasion of migration, all that follows is false, right? Everything that follows is false. Experimental. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that anything was experimental? I brought this up to so many scientists and so many doctors, and they'll go, okay, it's a gene therapy. I'm like, okay, they've done what's called change the name, right? It's a complex term called changing the name. They've changed the name from vaccine to gene therapy. And people go, well, therapy's good because they changed the name to something nice, right? They changed the name. It's a very complex thing called changing the name, right? So they changed the name from vaccine, because nobody believed that anymore, to gene therapy, right? And but where's the evidence that it's a therapy of anything? The evidence is crystal clear that it's a weapon. It is obvious. It's as obvious as October 7th was a setup. It's amazingly obvious, right? And these things have been happening since the edge of time. When I was in special forces, one of the things you learn early in your like initial training is how black ops work, how false flags work. You learn how false flags work. That's like initial training that you're learning in the first like 6 months. That's not like advanced Green Beret stuff. That's like welcome to the team, you know what I mean, stuff, right? You know, and so not that I ever did any. We never did any. My teams didn't. But you know, you're brought into it right off the bat, right? A lot of people from Green Berets and Delta and SEALs and all that, they go off and work for CIA later, right? Everybody knows that. I mean, actually, Special Forces after World War II was the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which then split and became two different things: Central Intelligence Agency and Green Berets, right? That's what OSS, Green Berets, CIA, right? And then they work together all the time with SEALs and Delta and all those guys, right? So, I mean, this is normal stuff. This is normal business. For some people, it's exotic, like agent provocateurs. At January 6th, I was there. I was the first one saying, hey, these are agent provocateurs, right? There's agent provocateurs there. First of all, these guys with the drums. Dun, 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 dun. Conservatives never show up with drums. That's always lefties. Oh, all over the world, it's always lefties, man. You see people with the drums. Dun, dun, dun. I'm like, okay, photograph everything about these guys' videos, all angles, right? We'll look at it later and figure out, oh, look, they all have the same shoes, right? Or whatever. Look, that, you know, these 4 guys have the same watch. that sort of stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is easy to figure out if you know what you're looking for, right? And we were there. I was there with Masako, and I was immediately like, hey, these are agent provocateurs. And then immediately they counter with, oh, agent provocateurs, that's that old French term. Suddenly everybody's an expert on agent provocateurs. I'm like, trust me, I've seen a lot of agent provocateurs. You'll have to trust me on that. But I've been all over the world in protest, right? And I spent 7 months in Hong Kong before they kicked me out, right? I was in 2 coups in Thailand, months on the ground. I wasn't just in Thailand for those coups. I was this close, right? People getting shot around me. There was thousands of casualties in those coups. I've been in protests all over the world. I can spot an agent provocateur like a Florida boy can spot the difference between a cattle egret and a blue heron, right? They're quite different. They pop off the page if you know what you're looking at, right? And so that was a setup, January 6th, obviously, right? This is as old as time. I don't know when the first agent provocateurs happened. Of course, it's an old French term, so people say that's when they invented it. Highly doubtful. And so agent provocateurs, It's an old form of getting things going and creating casus belli, right? That's another form of creating sort of casus belli. Casus belli is cause for war, right? So October 7th was casus belli for doing the genocide in Gaza, which is a clear genocide. Must call it by accurate name, or we'll never be able to make accurate predictions. You can't call it. You can't be trusted. If you people that can't call the border invasion an invasion, if they're still calling it migration, I don't have time for them, because there's only a very small set of people that, first of all, study it enough and have the courage to use the right words. That's your goal. That's your vein of gold right there. And they're out there. So you have to look for the people that study hard, preferably go places, and they will actually call things by the accurate name. Trump is a Zionist, but deep inside, he's a narcissist. At the core, he's a narcissist. Next level is Zionist. If Islam were a bigger architectural structure, he would be narcissist and Islamic. He would be narcissist and Christian. He would be narcissist and Hindu. He would be whatever he thinks either has the videotapes and gives him the silver or lead or whatever. He would be that thing, because he is the snake. He can shed his skin and become another snake, right? He is there because he's there to sell. He is no different than Biden. It's part of the same architecture. These are not separate. It's part of a movie. It's called kayfabe, right? It's called kayfabe. Biden was doing something called a dog king technique. Dog king. Trump does dog king as well. Dog king is dog king. Look at AOC. She's a dog queen, right? Or that Somali, whatever she is, up in Minnesota, right? She's a dog king. A dog king is an old psychological operations technique where you, like, one king runs out another king up in Sweden or Norway or wherever, runs one out and installs an actual dog on the throne and says, "This is your king." And people are like, "That's not our king. Our king's dead, or he ran off or something." And the winner says, "Well, that's your king now." And actually it's my dog. So my dog is your king, right? And so Trump is their dog. Biden is their dog. AOC is their dog, right? And the dog king, it really damages the psychology, demoralizes the people working in the farm fields and whatnot. It demoralizes the subjects and the people. But at the end of the day, the dog has a crown, the dog sits at the throne, the dog has an interpreter, the dog is served in a golden bowl for its water and its food, right? That is your king, right? It demoralizes the people whose king is now a dog, and it emboldens your enemies like the Chinese, right? It emboldens your enemies like the Zionists, right? It is a dog king, right? And so Trump is doing dog king, Biden dog king, AOC dog king, right? That's in service to something larger, because they're not separate. They are not separate. And the idea that it was a choice between Trump and somebody else. I either have to worship Trump or vote for Biden. Where do you come up with this red pill, blue pill crap, right? It's not a choice between the red pill. I don't even know this dude. I just met him. His name's Morpheus, I'm told. It's lightning outside and raining. And here, have a pill and some water. Okay, I'm going to take the red pill because I'm an action guy, right? All right. And then you've just taken a pill, which is, so you can't make up this stuff. So we're all born into it's nobody's fault who's watching this, because by the time our great-great-grandparents were born, these techniques were at a level of art, right? They were at cathedral level, right? They were music. Music, by the way, is one of the main weapons of warfare. Music can be a medicine or it can be a weapon. Intoxicants are number one by far, whether it be alcohol, opium, or whatever. Intoxicants. If I wanted to destroy a people, I would be sending them drugs and music. It would be the music that my people make or the people that I sponsor make. That's what I would do if I were the enemy. You always have to play, what would I do if I were the enemy? You have to red team it, right? And if I were the enemy, I would always start with intoxicants. Paul Harvey, if I were the devil, if I were the devil, I would put Trump in charge. And I'm not talking about Trump. He's a condom. He's a dog. He's a dog king for somebody else, right? If he acts up, he'll be out. If he was really the king, he would have been president the second time too, right? Some people say this is the third time he was president, right? He won the second election too. It's all part of the show. Enjoy the show, Q, right? It's all part of the show, right? This is a movie. You see the whole architecture around the existence of Israel. It is there about routes and resources. That's why Israel is even there as a modern country. That's why we are so thick into it. British and US intelligence thick on Israel, right? For generations. It was started before any of us were born. By the time we were born, this was a well established, every book you look at, every movie you go, the magazines, it's all there. If you read Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, I was just on his Red Pill actually expo a couple of weeks ago. They just messaged me like 10 minutes before you and I just went on. If you read The Creature from Jekyll Island from G. Edward Griffin, that book is very important. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. Brainwashing, repetition. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island, right? And you will see how he talks about how the old oligarchs in the 1800s, they didn't just come buy a newspaper. They bought the editor, right? It's like, I don't need to buy the army. I'm going to buy the generals. I'm going to buy the Secretary of Defense. I'm going to buy those guys. I'm going to establish my dog kings. I'm going to study how the cockpit works. I'm not going to invent the airplane. I'm going to steal the airplane, right? That's how this works. Like, that's what's happening with Japan. There are people that want to divide up Japan. There are people that want to divide up Thailand. And Thailand is highly vulnerable. I'm very familiar with Thailand. Thailand is more vulnerable than Japan, but Japan is very vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. I mean, Thailand is more vulnerable in a anthropological sense, and it's very difficult to defend because of its borders. Thailand is very anthropologically vulnerable, but the borders are very difficult. But in Japan, it's vulnerable from resources. I mean, there's just not enough food here, right? There's just not enough energy. This is a long story. I could talk about it for hours, but Japan is highly vulnerable, and that's why I wrote those 3 books on the information war. Now, keep in mind, the information war against Japan really got heavy after World War II, with GHQ General Headquarters, which was our headquarters, helped them write their constitution. But then we started the War Guilt Information Program, where we burned thousands of titles of Japanese books, took them and I don't know what they did with them. They might have dropped them in the sea for all I know. They had warehouses around Japan, and they were declared illegal books, right? So we did the same in Germany. I was giving a speech in Tokyo about 10 or 11 years ago or so, 12 years ago maybe. And I was giving this speech, and I said, I travel around the world, and I ask a bucket of questions to people like, do you trust your courts? Do you trust your police? Do you trust your army? That sort of thing. And I also ask, what countries do you like and what countries do you not like? What countries do you trust or not trust, right? And it's funny because if you talk with Japanese, they think that they're hated around the world, right? Or Americans think Americans are hated around the world. But I travel around the world a lot, and Americans are not hated around the world, despite all the stuff we do. Actually, I feel welcome almost everywhere I go, like very welcome, like especially welcome, including here in Nagasaki. I'm just near where the atomic bomb detonated, and I feel welcome. I feel very welcome. And so, our ancestors tended to be quite polite, actually. They tended to be quite decent people, except for a few amazing instances of not being. And so but when I was giving this speech in Tokyo 10 or 12 years ago, and I asked, there's only 3 countries that hate Japan. And I said, which these countries are? And they were like, Korea. And I said, okay, which they don't really hate Japan, but some Koreans do because there's an information war. And China, which I've been all over China. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to make Chinese hate Japan because they're doing that because they want to go to war with Japan. They are at war with Japan. And then they said North Korea. And I said, okay, let's just group the Koreans. Okay, 2 other countries hate Japan, the Koreas and China. But there's another one. Which one is that one? Nobody could get it. The country that hates Japan more than any other country is Japan. And they almost did a standing ovation, right? They were like clapping and everything. And I'm like, wow, you're right. And I'm like, I am right because I study this stuff and I lived in Germany. Ich spreche Deutsch. Ich war 4 Jahre in Deutschland eigentlich. I was for 4 years in Germany, right? I've been all over Germany. I've studied Germany quite a lot. We did the same in Germany, a war guilt information program. We made Germans hate Germany. We made Japanese hate Japan. Now we're making the same war guilt information we're doing it to ourselves. And what do? Flood our streets with intoxicants. I go around America, drugs everywhere. You got Joe Rogan, Doper Joe, with rocket dude Elon Musk smoking dope in front of tens of millions of young people. An actual act of war. Actually smoking dope. Now, the cannabis monkeys, the bong monkeys will say, you're against freedom and, nobody, gets into a fight after smoking dope, which is an unbelievable lie. It's like the stupidest lie I've ever heard only a bong monkey can believe that, right? And they'll go, what about alcohol? Yep, that one too, because these are what's called intoxicants, right? That's the number one weapons in warfare is intoxicants, full stop, period, right? And that's where you see Elon Musk, Rocket Boy. He's a drug addict. He talks about his ketamine problems, right? And, maybe I shouldn't say addict. He's a drug, just go by his words, not mine. How's that? You can look it up online, what he says about his close relationship with ketamine. And he smoked dope right on Joe Rogan's show, right? And so anyway, Joe Rogan's always like talking about the values of doing this drug or that drug or whatever. It's an operation. That's a psychological operation. Now the bong monkeys, of course, will say, "Hey man, what are you saying? You're one of those, what do they call them, boomers or whatever." They act like the whole world happened right when they were born. That's when the world started, right? And it's like as if people did not use the word dope back in the 1800s. They did, right? It's like, there was huge drug problems like cocaine in the United States in the 1800s, right? Anyway, the long story short is I read a lot of old books and the intoxicants pop up all the time in the old books, whether it be Guatemala or whatever. So what am I getting to with this? Israelis, they do a lot of drugs. They smoke a lot of dope. They do a lot of drugs, right? Israelis do a lot of drugs. Hold on. I'm going to sneeze. The Israelis do a lot of they smoke a lot of cannabis, and now fentanyl is in Israel heavily, right? Somebody is attacking Israelis, right? And they just smoke a lot of dope and they fight a lot, right? So I guess it doesn't make you that peaceful, but the point is that's not what it's about. It's about dumbing people down and making them more suggestible, right? Drugs are the number one weapon. And number 2 is music. If you can get in there and get in with the intoxicants, alcohol, whatever, and music, you can end up making huge influences on what the herd does, right? There's always going to be outliers that don't quite join the herd. And that would be like me. That's why they always kill us, right? Because there's always those outliers and nobody knows why they exist, but they exist. I know because I'm one of them, right? And they're the ones who can be in the herd one day and then be an eagle the next, right? Like on some things, I'll just go along with the herd because, I can't fight every battle, right? So you know what I mean? It's like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to be quiet, just whatever. That's, and then there's some things that like, but on this thing, it's time to fight. Like against the intoxicants, against China taking over the United States and taking our ports, against having Tokyo zero borders, border zero, against all those things, against destroying Japan. Japan is our number one ally. That's why I'm here. Thailand is very important. I've spent a lot of time in Thailand. They're being taken apart. And there are now cannabis stores all over Thailand. In the last 3 or 4 years, there were more than 9,000 cannabis licenses issued, more than 93 or 9,400 last time I checked. And that was like about a year ago that I checked, right? And so, yeah. And so they didn't exist even like 4 or 5 years ago, right? But now in the same down in Argentina, Masako and I went to Argentina and we went to a cannabis expo, and people are asking me like, Doug Casey, what do you think about Argentina? I'm like, I like it. However, I'm not going to overlook inconvenient things like that cannabis expo. I know for some people it's all about freedom and all this, but I know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a weapon. I'm looking at a B-52 dropping joints on people. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this is not the only weapon. This is a part of an architecture of war, right? Argentina is going to be a fight between Zionists and Chinese. That is crystal clear. Meliakovsky, Mele, the president, Meliakovsky, Netanyahu, Israel, same name, Meliakovsky, right? When I went to CPAC in December or November 2024 in Buenos Aires, they opened it up with, Ben Shapiro guy, the jab pusher. He was there speaking. One of the Trumps was there. One of the opening thing was Viva Argentina, Viva Estados Unidos, Viva Israel, right? So it was Viva Israel, Viva Argentina, Viva United States, Viva Israel, right? And the Chinese operate that port at Buenos Aires. The Chinese are building a corridor across the bioceanic corridor between Brazil, goes through Argentina and over through Chile, right? Masako and I went up there, looked on it, got on a little train that the Chinese solar powered train, pretty interesting. And it's going to be a fight between them, just like it is in Panama. It's the same fight in Panama. It's a fight. Americans don't get this, but actually it's more of a fight between Chinese and Zionists than Americans and Chinese, right? It's quite fascinating, but it takes background. It's not something you're going to understand with an hour of study. That's not something you're going to understand with a week of study. It's going to be something that you have to really devote some time and effort into, just like you're not going to suddenly be a surgeon or a doctor or a microbiologist. It takes time to study these things, and here's how you know if you're getting somewhere on your studies. Are you able to successfully predict things way better than the experts? Because most of the experts are not experts at all. So it shouldn't be difficult to beat most of them, right? Most of them should be easy wins. Most of them, like Ukraine. Ukraine, look at anything I've written on Ukraine and look how it's turning out, right? Extremely accurate. Look at Darien, Panama Gap, all the Panama, anything I've written, and how is it unfolding, right? Anything I've written over the years, and how's it unfolding? Likewise with the Nord Stream, Groningen, screwworms, Japan. I've written those 3 books on Chinese information war. If you speak Japanese, find them online. They're on Amazon.jp, and you can read them, and you can see how's it turning out, right? How is it turning out with the lawsuits between Korea and Japan? Look what I was writing in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then the lawsuits, look how they came in 2019 and 20. Look what I wrote. Look how it turned out, right? And so I study. I study a lot. I study for years. It's been decades of going to these countries, living in many of the countries, reading unbelievable amounts of old books, running around with top leaders of many countries, running around in the jungles with the Indians or the Pashtun people out in Afghanistan, the Baluch people in Afghanistan, the Hazar people in Afghanistan, the Tajiks, the Turkmens. I was out with all of them, right? And and the same over in Iraq. I ran around that place for 2 years. I was out with the Sunni and the Shia and the Al Jabari tribe and the Al Takriti tribe and the Kurds of various tribes and the Yazidis. I was out with all of them, off up to Turkey, the whole works, right? It takes time, right? But you can see it. If you study enough, and you have to be brutal in your studies. It's not what I want to hear. It has to be what I find. It has to be what I find. And then if your paradigm, how you're looking at the world is accurate and your input information is 24 karat gold, you got to go through a lot of mud to get to that gold, and you've assembled it in a workable architecture of knowledge, you should be able to develop a paradigm that is never leaves you surprised. Even if you're not able to predict it on some things, like you shouldn't be surprised when, like, Trump does something and people are like, I can't believe he is not going for the Epstein thing. And I'm like, look at anything I published. Was I surprised? Nope. In fact, I've been putting in writing over and over and over and over and over, right? Not surprised, because my paradigm is highly predictive. If your paradigm and your input information are both good, then you should not be surprised. Anytime you feel the emotion of surprise, I got to re-examine either my input information or my paradigm or both, right? And you got to be brutal. Never give yourself a pass. If you're wrong, never give yourself a pass. Re-examine, sit down, write down, how did I get this thing wrong, right? And that input information was wrong. Okay, then I didn't know that. Now, but I was able to predict the screwworms. One briefing. I got one briefing. Masako and I, we were down in Panama talking to an intel guy, and he told us about screwworms about maybe 4 years ago, right? And instantly I'm like, oh, those will end up being back in the United States, because I know what they're trying to do. I know what our enemies are up to. Why? Because they tell us. They actually say it. They say it with their mouths. They say it in their books. They say it in their websites. They tell us what they're going to do. They're going to attack our food supply, right? And the H5N1, burning down the cattle, whatever, burning down chicken farms. Amish people can't sell milk, all these different things, additive pressures, right? And so I immediately reached out to the screwworm people down in Copeg, down in Panama. I messaged them in writing several times, and I could tell by their response, this is a cover-up, because I deal with governments around the world. So I immediately published it. And I said, this is a paradigm prediction. In other words, I'm extrapolating, and I'm going to just go with only this much information, and I'm going to predict we're going to have screwworms back in the United States. And I did it. Nobody ever heard of screwworm. Most people hadn't. And now look, it's all over the news, right? And how did I get that accurate? When you're in war, you need to, as a commander, you need to be able to make quick decisions based on as little information as possible that are accurate as possible. You have to be quick, quick, quick. War is all about timing, right? I got to be fast. I got to see this go. Da, 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 da. Oh, he's going over there, right? And okay, send somebody over there and block them, right? Or whatever, smoke them, right? Whatever. We have to be quick. We have to be quick. No, this is an ambush. Don't go that way. Go that way, right? Sit tight, right? You have to make quick decisions, right? I see this little bit of information. I'm like, screwworms are going to make it back to the United States. Reached out to the Copeg people. It was clear cover up. Published it. Boom. Now look, right? Nord Stream, similar, right? That's why I think with Strait of Hormuz, I don't know, of course, but it could be closed. And if it is closed, we're going to blame it on Iran. I think it'll be us who closes it. Iran has no reason to close it any more than Russia had any reason to close Nord Stream. Why would Russia blow up their own pipeline? That's like, hello. You know what I mean? But Americans are instantly like, Russia blew up the pipeline to Germany. Hello. Russia and Germany built the pipeline. Like, okay. No, that's not what happened. It was either United States or space aliens that did it, right? United States even threatened in advance about doing it, right? They even threatened it. I think those probably just slipped out, or they were just telling you who they are, right? And so, Strait of Hormuz. Iran has no reason to close the Strait of Hormuz. I say again, Iran has no reason to close the Strait of Hormuz. Why would they close it, right? Iran, by the way, there's a railway now that goes all the way from Shanghai. I've been to that side of it in Shanghai. It goes all the way to Tehran now, right? It's open now. Open, I don't know, a couple months ago or so, roughly, right? And routes and resources. That way, China doesn't have to go through the Strait of Malacca to reach there, and can do all kinds of trade in between. And anyway, and so Iran has no reason to close the Strait of Hormuz at all, right? They have every reason not to close it. And China doesn't want it closed, that's for sure. But if you want to really knock Japan and China off their stools and a lot of others, and you want to cause famines, because at least some of the oligarchical structures that are fighting want to cause mass depopulation, right? Jabs, right? So the same people that want to do they're doing the jabs that's the depopulation people, right? Those people, Maliakovsky, who has a mounted needle, it's Zionists. Zionists want to depopulate, right? And they want to repopulate with this weaponized migration, which China is taking advantage of as well, right? And so those people have a vested interest in closing the Strait of Hormuz and even Suez Canal for some period of time. And maybe get the Houthis to close the Bab el-Mandeb as well, and even maybe the Panama Canal. They'll probably want to close the Panama Canal in some way that's not permanently destructive, right? And same with Strait of Hormuz, which it'd be hard to permanently destruct the Strait of Hormuz. But what they can do, we keep saying always watch your enemy's information war. They tend to radiate information. Radiation is quite real, right? And they often will radiate days, months, years, even many generations in advance what they're going to do. Chinese radiate generations in advance what they're doing. And we're radiating now. We're radiating, hey, the Iranian Navy may close the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian Navy, they keep saying, the Iranian Navy may close the Strait. Oh, there was mysterious Iranian Navy action by the Strait of Hormuz. Well, why is there anything mysterious about the Strait of Hormuz? It's right there. It's by Iran, right? Why did we leave the Iranian Navy intact when they might close the Strait of Hormuz, right? Why would we do that? Why, when you're out there, doing attacks, why would you leave that Navy intact at all if they were doing that, right? Because you would want to be able to blame somebody. Like if there were mines out there, because they're like, the Iranian Navy could mine the Strait of Hormuz. Well, the United States could lay mines out there too. We have mines that are very sophisticated, right? They can be laid by submarines. They can lay themselves, right? We have mines that are submarines, right? The mine can go out there and lay on the bottom and just chill out for years, right? And it can listen. They have acoustic sensors, right? And they have a library of how the different ships sound. They can wait for the right ship to go over and boom, blow it up, right? And the mine is not just waiting for you to run into it. It'll hear you and go track you down and run into you, right? You know what I'm saying? It's a torpedo, right? We have mines that are very sophisticated. They're probably already in place. I don't know, but they can be in place all over the place, right? Strait of Gibraltar, Malacca, right? How are you going to stop that? You're not going to be able. China knows that. You can also actually close it, obviously, by land-based missiles or whatever. Many ways to do these things. The naval people could talk about it for months. Naval warfare is, that's why China wants these workarounds. That's why China is building that canal through Mekong River through Cambodia. And off the Mekong River, it's called the Funan Techo Canal. That way, they don't have to deal with Vietnam anymore on that. They're building that land bridge through, Thailand is very nationalistic. So Thailand's like, we're going to do it. But China wants it, obviously, across the Kra Isthmus. That way, if you look at the map, which I put on Substack, if you look at my Substack, you can see these maps. You'll be able to bypass the Strait of Malacca, and these trains that China is building all over the place, all the way from Shanghai to down into Spain to Rotterdam to Rotterdam's the biggest harbor in Europe. That's Netherlands, of course, and Antwerp, which is just south of that, in Belgium. They're building trains everywhere, so they can bypass. Remember, the cheapest way to send cargo is water, right? Second is railway, right? And so railways and, water has always been the cheapest way since a long, long time. That's why in the 1800s, the United States built more than 4,000 miles of canals in the United States. Americans built more than 4,000 miles of canals in the United States in the 1800s. And then we started getting better and better at trains. And so they started doing a lot more trains. And so then they started building fewer canals and more trains. But the United States is blessed with an incredible river system and intercoastal waterway and all these things. The United States is really lucky with our water highways, but we also built thousands of miles of canals and railways and now roads, of course. But that's what this is about, routes and resources. Now, if you see the Strait of Hormuz get closed, if you're in a place like Japan, I would highly suggest you be stocked up on food, and I mean a lot. And I would highly suggest that you be prepared for anything. I don't know what would happen. Maybe just prices will go up, or like a lot, or whatever. But just, it's going to be stormy water if it's closed for a long time. It could obviously be very devastating to the Chinese, right? And remember, the Chinese and the Zionists are fighting. But remember also, China is part of what's called the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? Which is like their NATO. Russia, China, the official languages of SCO are Russian and Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Mandarin. And so member states include Iran, Tajikistan, Pakistan, India, right? Right. This is their NATO, right? They are. You see the fight for the Caspian Sea that's unfolding. It's all. And by the way, I've got books on the Caspian Sea routes that are from 1700s, early 1700s, the British, and you see the Zionists now are attacking the Christians in Armenia by selling weapons to the Shia Azeris. The Azeris are Shia. And weirdly, it's all for routes and resources, but the Iranians have actually threatened the Azeris to leave the Christians in Armenia alone, right? So while the Zionists sell weapons to genocide the Christians in Armenia, let me repeat, for all the Christian Zionists who are throwing all your money at the magical elves of Israel, they are selling weapons to the Muslims to kill Armenian Christians, while Iran defends the Armenian Christians against the Azeri Muslims. Get that in your head, right? See how twisted this is? And what's this all about? Routes and resources. Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea is not actually a sea. It's a brackish lake. It used to be a sea. It's like as big as Japan. Like literally, I'm not exaggerating. I think it's roughly the size of Japan. Caspian Sea is nothing new on routes and resources. Russia needs it to come down south and go through Iran and whatnot. And others want to, north, south, east, west. Caspian Sea is one of those. You ever go to these malfunction junction intersections, like in Texas, or wherever, a different place where you got like 8 highways that seem to come together? Those, if you look at history, almost certainly those malfunction junctions are where the Indians used to also trade, right? The routes and resources don't really trade. They don't really change that much. You just show up with a ship this time instead of a rowboat, right? Or you show up with a train instead of camels. And so the Caspian Sea is like that. It used to be, I got some very old books where they were like hanging pirates and stuff in the early 1700s. And this is just amazing, the things that go at the Caspian Sea. But right now, there's this other fight that's going on. It's all related. The thing in Ukraine, the thing in Iran, the thing down in Panama, Israel, all this stuff is the same. The food, the reasons, the screwworms, the death jabs, all the intoxicants, the cannabis that Trump was pushing, Amendment 3 in Florida, so that the cannabis would be legal, and Governor DeSantis stood up against it. It's all about war. And why are we having these wars? It's not so the magical elves can have Israel, that are not even Jewish, but they're from, like Dawes rolls. For people that know what the Dawes rolls are, they're like, suddenly, hey, I can get some land. Oh, I'm Jewish. We call those rice bowl Christians, right? Or the Irish might call this superism, right? Superism, because of the famines, and Protestants are trying to convert Catholics with soup and that sort of thing. Yeah, well, the Dawes rolls, or the 5 civilized tribes, or let's say the Cherokee, when they're like, suddenly all the people like me that are Scots-Irish descent, suddenly all of us think we're part Cherokee because you can get some free land, right? That's what that was all about, right? So Scott-Irish, you have a lot of people that are as white as I am suddenly thinking, hey, I'm part Cherokee. And because you've been told, but because when they started dividing up the land and giving land to people who were from the 5 civilized tribes. What were 5 civilized tribes? Like Cherokee, Choctaw, was it Cree and Seminoles, and what was the other one? Anyway, but it was because they accepted Christianity, right? So they were the 5 civilized tribes. And so they were dividing up land among them. This would be at like the turn of the century, 1900, right? Roughly. And I've got dozens of books on that, those aspects of the U.S. history on just the indigenous stuff. It's fascinating. And but it's the same thing that's happening today. So they come out and they go, hey, if you can prove you're of Cherokee descent, and this is why Cherokee track their bloodlines like Mormons do, right? If you can prove you're of Cherokee descent, you could get land, right? So suddenly all the Scott Irish like me that are living redneck out in the hollers, right? I'm part Indian, and so that's why they had the Dawes rolls. The rolls were the actual people that were actually Cherokee, right? And so, and it's the same situation with the Cherokee now. I have a friend who's Cherokee, like straight up hardcore Cherokee, and of course, if you ask the Cherokees about blood quantum and stuff, that gets to be touchy, right? Blood quantum, what percentage of ratio you are of Indian, whether or not you can be. All the tribes have their different laws. It gets to be touchy because it's touchy, like with the Jewish thing, right? Because hey, Israel's our country. We can take some of that land from West Bank or whatever, or Gaza or whatever, right? Because my blood quantum or whatever, you identify this, whatever, this is all the same thing. It's nothing new. The Zionist thing that was happening, Zionism was formed in when? 1897, right? 1897, Theodore Herzl. His name is on the back of that bond I bought from 1899, right? You can look it up online. Look online for these bonds, and you can buy them online. They're expensive, but you can buy one and you can frame it, and it'll give you something to study and talk about. And Theodore Herzl and some of the other original Zionists are on there. But the same thing was happening in the same time frame in the United States, right? So think about this. All the Dawes rolls and all this stuff were happening at the same time that we were helping get the Jews to Israel, right? It was the same play, different. I've never seen anybody connect these two. And the only reason I connected them is because, I'm part geek and part action man. You know what I mean? I'm I've got a geek side to me that's quite intense, and it's been like that since I've been a little boy. I used to be like addicted to physics for like 10 years, right? I was as addicted to physics as Hunter Biden is to crack, And so, I mean, it's just like I couldn't live without physics, And now, I study anthropological warfare and routes and resources in the same way now, right? And different forms of warfare, information war, and it's just huge. And the thing is when you look at all the old, you should see my library. And it's if you looked at my library, it might look like a bunch of random books, but somebody who studied this for many years would say, oh, whoever owns this library is studying the highest level of warfare that he can imagine, right? It's not all about cannons and submarines and firefights and Green Berets and all that stuff. That's like one tiny piece of war, right? Tiny piece. And it's more about information war. It's about anthropological warfare. It's about using intoxicants. It's about using music. It's about, it's that stuff, right? It's big boy war, right? It's unrestricted warfare. That book, Unrestricted Warfare, by the 2 Chinese colonels. What's their names? Anyway, it's a great book. I suggest everybody read it. But the idea that the Chinese suddenly came up with this, they didn't. It's the way warfare has been going since forever, right? It's unrestricted warfare. Most forms of warfare people can't even see because they're invisible. They're happening in the realm of mathematics. They're happening in the realm of printing money. They're happening in the realm of intoxicants. You can see that, but you don't realize it's actually a weapon, right? If you look at these, look at music. Let's look at modern music in America. I like country music, but the more you understand how music is used in war, the more you start looking at it more like a researcher than as an enjoyer, right? And the more you're like, wait a minute, all this country music I like, Heads California, Tails California, whatever. How's that song go? Heads Carolina, Tails California, all that stuff. Really upbeat songs. I love them. They're great. But then where does it start? It starts in a bar, right? It starts in a bar, right? You look at so many of these uh, old music that you can see where it's progressed to do this, right? You can see over time where they keep pushing the limits. It goes from just a Mother's Little Helper, from Rolling Stones or whatever, Pills. It goes from it just one thing after another. It gets harder and harder and harder. And the same people that invest in music in America invest in prisons. Black rap, go kill cops, do drugs, treat your women badly, because you listen to oh good lord, what's his name, Doctor. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, he's a black professor. I've read several of his books. My mind is drawing a blank, which it doesn't usually do, but it does that sometimes. It has a glitch in the matrix. But but uh, but he talks about how he used to live in Harlem, and it was very peaceful. It was actually, and he spent a lot of time in libraries and whatnot. And but then over time, all these things came in: the drugs, the intoxicants, the music, and now it's like a war zone, right? And the same people that invest in all that stuff are the ones that invest in prisons. And you're destroying the United States. You're doing anthropological warfare, getting people to fight each other, and to fight women to fight men, men to races to fight each other, adults to fight children, children to fight adults, right? To atomize our structures so that everybody just fights all the time, and then we can be beaten, right? Anyway, I think you need to go. I can tell.
No, 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 not at all. No, no, not at all. I'm just adjusting myself. I'm actually fascinated by this, and so that's why I've been letting you talk. You covered so many fascinating things. Gosh, I'll just start off with the jab. I remember hearing this from a buddy of mine, and I'll mention his name. I don't know if he'll come. Morton Irvine Smith out of Orange County. They put him on the LA, I think it was on the LA Times. He was waving an American flag on a Corvette. I don't know if you've heard the name, but that was the first time I heard this. Okay. That was a few years ago. And I kind of thought, it's kind of out
Heard what?
there,
First time you heard
his name
what?
is Morton. About the jab, like the COVID shot was intended to kill.
Clearly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that being said, you hear about this stuff, okay, over time, and then also about, you mentioned a little bit of a cult sub. You mentioned, I mean, clearly from what I'm getting from you is there is without a doubt, for lack of a better word, an evil or like a cabal, if you will. I know I'm kind of making comments, but okay, so here's another thing, and some people might roll their eyes, but whatever. I hear stuff here and there as I've gone down the rabbit hole of power structures. What can you define this evil? Is it evil in the sense of like from a ecclesiastical standpoint, or evil like a satanic kind of thing? I'm genuinely intrigued because I hear this from people.
I was having breakfast with some missionaries in Armenia a couple of years ago. Me and Misako were with Chuck Holton and some other missionaries. It's quite interesting. One a big, nice, beautiful wooden table. Gave us plenty of time to talk. And I actually asked, like, when I want to fight something, I need to know what it is. I need to identify the target, right? That I either want to gather information about, or what is this thing, right? And I want to fight evil, but I don't actually know exactly what it is, right? Like I'm trying to, I mean, it's like art. I know it when I see it. I know evil when I see it, but what actually is art? What is evil, right? It's one of those things. And so, because what is evil? What do you think it is?
I'm sorry, you're asking me a question. What do I think it is? I'm like staring at the camera and I look down to look at you. Um, gosh. I mean, look, I don't do as extensive research on things as you do. I'm just kind of curating and trying to piece this reality together that we live in. It does seem that there is some element of like a cult or at least a cabal, and you've got deviant individuals as hard as I think it is to believe for your average person to think that people in positions of government or these alphabet agencies that they're there to protect and look out for you, from what I have observed from others and such, is you have an element of that, and I guess it does kind of fit nicely with a religious component to things, more or less.
Yeah, what actually is it? We know it when we see it, but to define it is quite difficult, isn't it? So we might just have to come down to when we know it when we see it. Like that painting behind you is actual art, right? I know it. I see it. It's beautiful, right? It draws. What is this thing? I don't know, but I'm in an Airbnb, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, so it's that thing, and so, but you got a painting behind you, and evil. We know it when we see it. But Chuck Holton, I think it was, he said evil, because this is something he's thought about as well, pushes towards death, and he said it more eloquently than I am. I'm sorry, I'd need to ask Chuck how he said it, but he said it in a way that did make sense. I mean, I could see that, but it was still just a component. I remember that much as well. But I've not actually been able to define it. And I've gone for very long walks thinking about what is evil, and so that I can identify this thing and start to, because if we can identify it, we can start picking it apart. We can attack it more effectively, because what you don't want to do is, you want to identify the architecture of it. You want to identify how does this thing actually work, right? Like, you want to attack the organizational structure, right? That's what you want to go for. You don't want to go for the fruit on the edges of the branches. You're trying to kill a poison tree by picking the fruit, and throwing the fruit around and spreading the seeds, right? We want to spread mustard seed, not poison ivy seeds, right? So what actually makes this thing grow? What we can see is there are architectures that are making evil grow. We can see that much. World Economic Forum is making evil grow, right? That's clear. And Governor Abbott of Texas is a member of the World Economic Forum. He's on their website. He clearly, the things that he does is clearly, he's like the Texas sector chief of World Economic Forum. They don't call him that. He's the governor. Actually, my friend is running for governor in Texas, Doc Pete Chambers. You might want to have Doc on, actually. I can introduce you. But Doc Chambers would be he's an actual American, right? I mean, but Abbott, like Biden, Abbott, they're all the same to me. Harris, they're all the same. Trump, same. It's like those people are U.S. citizens, right? And then there's Americans who are America first, they have something bigger first. Like, I'm not in charge here. God is, right? And that's why a lot of the evil people, they hate people that that don't take a knee to them. They only take a knee to God. They won't take a knee to a man, right? Unless they got a gun to his head, then of course they'll take a knee. But that's only because it's a choice between that or death, right? And some will and some won't. Actually, some still won't take a knee, and they'll just die. And some will take a knee and die, right? And so at the end of the day, what is evil? These people that are part of the architecture of that and are doing the bidding of evil. And keep in mind, when I'm down, okay, let's go back to Nazi times in World War II. What was a Nazi? Ordinary men, like ordinary people that were farmers or whatever, and the next thing you know, they're in the Nazi party, right? The Nazi party was a party just like Zionist party, right? No different. No different. The things that they want are very similar. Actually, the Nazis and the Zionists worked together, and the Jews killed a bunch of the Zionists, right? Because they're like, "Hey, you're working with the Nazis, right?" There's actually a book you can find online about the Zionists and the Nazis working together. These documents that are, have come to light over the time, but they work together. And Hitler and the Zionists wanted some of the same things. The Zionists wanted the Jews down in Israel, because the Zionists were sponsored by British intelligence, right? And because they wanted control of Suez Canal. They didn't look where Israel is, right? So they wanted to go take that land as a check on. They want to control the Suez Canal routes and resources, right? So they used the Jews as useful idiots, right? And then they used the Americans, me, to come defend the magical elves. We have to defend the Jews returning to Israel, to the Holy Land. That's not what it was about. It was about, because if the Jews wanted the Holy Land, and Einstein wrote this in his letter in when 46 or 48? I've got that letter. Einstein wrote a letter because Einstein was Jewish, but he wasn't a Zionist. And he's talking about how the Zionists are damaging the cause of Jewish people, of finding a homeland, because some Jews wanted to go down to Argentina, and some have, right? They're there now, right? They're down in southern Argentina, and some are up in Buenos Aires. I've talked with quite a lot of them when I was up there, or down there, over there. And but some, I mean, because the Jews could have easily have gone to Argentina and just live in peace, no problem, and a lot have and did. And so they're just down there living like humans and peacefully. But then there are the ones like the Dawes rolls with the Cherokees, like, hey, we'll go take this land. So suddenly people can go. You're sold the idea that we're doing it because we're going back to the Holy Land. Like, yeah, really, it's about, I can get me some land. You know what I mean? That's what it's really about. That's why Scots Irish are suddenly Cherokee, right? It's about the land. That's why the superism, when the Catholics going, okay, I'm Protestant now because I'm hungry, right? Or as many missionaries have called it in Asia, rice bowl Christians. Like many Chinese would be rice bowl Christians. They would convert, or they would come to church for the rice, right? I mean, that was, so the missionaries are, I love talking with missionaries. I've traveled a lot, spent a lot of time. I learned a huge amount from missionaries. It's just, if you ever get a chance to, or if you are one, traveling around with missionaries is like, it's like advanced level study, right? I've done it all over the world. And so actually, one senior guy at CIA told me one time, he goes, missionaries are the real CIA, Christians in action. He's like, they know everything, right? And they do. And there's missionaries of many sorts. They're not just Christians. There's missionaries that are Islamic that do very similar. They go out and they study languages and do these sorts of things. And Hare Krishnas, I was up in Vilnius in Lithuania studying some of the invasion stuff that's going on. And there was Hare Krishnas going through town, right? I go to Argentina, in Buenos Aires, it's the same thing, right? And it's the same thing here in Japan. So there's many different types of people doing their own forms of globalism, right? And because that is actually what it is. And but superism, or rice bowl Christians, or Dawes roll, Scots Irish and others who are suddenly Cherokee or whatever, or the people that are suddenly, I'm Jewish because this is a powerful tribe and they got more money, right? And they're I feel like I can just don this cloak and that's what I am. And and that's what Zionists have done too. You constantly have this camouflage. Camouflage is just the way things are, and nobody camouflages quite like humans. I mean, we see like a chameleon that can change colors, but not Americans, but humans can do this like incredibly well, right? They can change, like honestly change, or they can change their uniform, right? They can be one thing and then they can be the next thing. They can be the other thing. And that's why suddenly you had a lot of people rushing over to Israel. They want free land, right? And because they could have easily, again, gone to Argentina or other places, and did in some cases do those things. And so that's what Israel actually is. It is an outpost of influence in that area. And I've gotten word that the United States wants to take, or Israel and the United States want to take all the Sinai, right? Because it's about Suez Canal. It's about Suez and Bab al-Mandeb and Strait of Hormuz, and all that energy, all those routes, all that resources, right? That's what it's really about, right? And they need to clean out Gaza. I published all this way in advance. They need to clean out Gaza. They got to clean out West Bank. They've got to do quite a few other things. Taking out Iraq was one of them. You see, this is a multi-generation process. It's like, these things. If you look at the canal, that wasn't built in 14 years or something, right? That canal was, or 12 years, depending on when we did generations of studies, generations. I've got a whole library. I got our original reports to Congress, the Isthmian Canal Commissions, and Admiral Seward's reports to Congress, and I get all the original maps, all the original documents, this took generations of study to make the Panama Canal. Actually literally hundreds of years if you include other countries, right? And it's likewise with what's happening in the larger architecture of the globe. Generations of you can see the greater Israel is about an oligarchical structure, has nothing to do with Jews, right? They're using Jews as useful idiots and Christians as useful idiots and some Muslims as useful idiots that are actually Zionists, and a lot of atheist Zionists as useful idiots, unless they're part of the top oligarchical structure, right? And by the way, if you took the jab, I know some of my readers and followers are absolutely definitely billionaires. I know some of them, right? And it's because I get messages from them. But if you took the jab and you're in the wild, right? And nobody told you not to take it, there is no place for you on the ark. They tried to assassinate you, right? Whether you're a royal family in any of these countries, top leadership, no matter how rich and famous you are, Scott Adams, if you took the jab, Scott Adams, who pushed the jab, you were never part of the club, Scott Adams. I told you this, Scott Adams, in advance, right? Who was pushing the jab, right? And now he's dying. You were never part of the club. You thought you were part of the club, but you were not. If you were pushing the jab and nobody said, hey, don't do it, telling you this at Davos or something, when you're flying on the little jet together, if it wasn't like a key person in that global big boy architecture that told you not to take it, then they literally were trying to assassinate you, and may have done it and you're not dead yet. They may have sterilized your children. They may have reduced your cognitive abilities. They may have done all these things, right? One of the royal family in Thailand, she had multiple jabs and collapsed, and she's gone, right? If you took the jab in the wild and nobody warned you not to, you're not part of the club. And I got a call coming in. Sorry about that, and the ringer
no
wasn't
worries.
turned off.
No
I
worries. I
know
can
what it
always
was.
pause it.
Oh, yeah. Can you pause it? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can just edit this out. Yeah,
Hello.
don't sweat it.
Hello. Yeah, I'm still on with Christian. Oh, I'll check it. Okay. All right. Hold on just a second, Christian. Yeah, I'll check it. Hold on.
Oh, no worries. Take your time.
Hold
Take your
on.
time.
Okay.
No worries. Boy, this is fascinating.
I've got to. It's a wild talk, isn't it? I mean, this is such a
Oh my
fascinating area.
gosh. Yeah, this is you're really opening my mind. If you got to make a stop at a certain time, please let me know.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. Let's roll.
Okay, cool. All right. So we had taken a brief or a momentary break earlier, Michael, and we were talking about the jabs. I think before we took our break. So I look, I felt pressure to take it. I wasn't aware of this whole world that I'm kind of in now as it relates to kind of the the nature of things. What are people supposed to do if you did take the jab, if you will? And I guess that'll be my first part question.
Yeah, I mean, we were all born into this super sophisticated information war, so it's no fault of the innocent, literally billions of people who took it. I mean, just it's only the fault of the top players who knew what they were doing and still pushed it. They're actually evil. Now, good news. I'll give some bad and good news here. I'm in Japan, right? So, and I happen to be constantly with the people that are working on this issue here in Japan, right? And one is Misako Ganaha, right? And who is my wife, right? So Misako Ganaha, right? And so she works with some of the top scientists, um, Yasufumi Murakami, right? And they have studied this in great detail. They know they have about 25 million records now, and they know that about 600,000, they believe about 600,000 Japanese have died from the jabs, right? And now, however, if you didn't die within that first period of time, they seem to be okay, actually, from according to what the studies they've done here in Japan. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to affect fertility or something like that along the lines. I don't know. But when it comes to the actual death rates, I'll have to send you a link later and you can look more about it. Mike Adams was on a call that we did, Mike Adams, Health Ranger. And so because Masako invited him onto a call about 2 or 3 weeks ago with all the scientists and some others like Dr. Murakami. And so Mike Adams is in Texas. And Mike, one of the takeaways he had from the call was actually that good news. In other words, if you ain't dead yet, there's a good chance you're in the clear. There's a high chance of that. Nobody knows, but the huge death wave happened in the first few months, and then after that it's abated. And the more jabs that you get, the worse off it is. Like personally, I'm not taking anything else ever again. I took some jabs in 2019 before all this because I was getting ready to go to India, and so I have seen so much disease in India because I've been there before that. So I wasn't anti-vax at all. And at that point, it would be another year that I would start to go in that direction. And within a year and a half, I'm like, oh, I'll never touch another one. Right. But, um, but I had taken several because I was going to India and just, man, India let's say it's a biological extravaganza, and but nothing untoward seemed to have happened to me actually. And so and then of course then there was the whole Hong Kong thing blew up, and I was in the middle of that, and then the pandemic unfolded while I was in Hong Kong. And then they started the death jab thing. And at first, I thought the pandemic was real. At first, I thought it was very real. Of course, I was transitioning from being in that fighting every day for 7 months, and then the Chinese kicked me out of Hong Kong. It was in the news actually. And then I was back in my office in Thailand, and I had actually, since I had just gotten kicked out, I had plenty of time to take a break and read books, which is what I do when I'm not on the ground working. I'm got my nose in the books, and that's when the whole pandemic's unfolding. I'm like, wow, this could be terrible. And because I thought it was real, and I had read many books on pandemic, because pandemic and famine and war go together. Four horsemen, right? It's three of the horsemen. And so pandemic, famine, and war, they're like a triangle. If you get a big war, you're going to get pandemic and famine. If you get a big famine, you get war and pandemic. If you get they just go together. It's like an isosceles triangle. And so anytime you get a big war like World War II, there was all kinds of little famines in there, and typhus and all kinds of stuff broke out. We just tend to focus on the shooting parts because that's the dramatic parts, but there were a lot of sub stories there, like the Hunger Winter in Netherlands, which was the Hunger Winter, which was a famine in Netherlands. There was a lot of famines and stuff, because these things do go together. And they also create something called HOP, human osmotic pressure. Human osmotic pressure is the push and the pull of migration, right? And of actual migration, and and but so I thought the pandemic was real in the beginning. Now Hong Kongers right from the beginning were going, no, it's not real. Or it's real and the Chinese just released it because we're gaining success in our uprising and they want to break it. And I was like, the people that were saying that were not crazy, and I'd known them for a while, and I was like, that they're saying it makes me think because they're not wild conspiracy theorists, right? And they think that's what's happening. And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's a real pandemic. And the Hong Kongers are like, it might be a real pandemic and it might not. But in any case, whatever it is, it's probably them trying to break us up in Hong Kong. And anyway, as time goes on, I bought all kinds of masks and I couldn't get enough masks. I was trying to get masks. I was trying to get an assistant to buy masks in Florida so that I could send to friends in Hong Kong and Thailand because I wanted all my friends and family and immediate circles that I could afford. I wanted to get a mask because I thought it was real in the beginning, right? And now the masks I used were like serious masks because I'm doing war stuff. I'm out in tear gas every day and stuff, I'm using actual, like, no kidding mask, not those little diaper things, but the weird thing is my assistant in Florida couldn't get masks. And I'm like, really? Because nobody really knows about the pandemic yet. When I was doing this right at the front end, right? Like I was one of the very first people saying, hey, there might be a pandemic unfolding in China because I had followed like H5N1 every day for years on my Google alerts, and I've followed these things for many years. Typhus, typhoid. I always follow epidemic typhus. I follow certain things because in like my morning briefing, I look at my alerts to see. And so when this thing came from China, I was like, wow, here we go again. And so, got to study this thing as quickly as possible and take any evasive actions here and in measures. And so then I started, trying to get those masks and I couldn't get them. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And anyway, it turned out later, apparently Chinese were buying a lot of the masks and that's why they were not available. But I mean, I did get some and I just gave them away to people. And then as time unfolded, I thought we should lock down immediately because I'm just basing that based on historical reading of other pandemics. That's where the name quarantine came from, right? They would keep people on ships for 40 days, right, before letting them in harbor, so they don't get, because disease is real. I mean, people are like, pandemics, people are always xenophobic. I'm like, no, they're not. Straight up, yellow fever came from Africa. You know what I mean? We brought yellow fever to the Indians in the United States or America, and they gave us syphilis in return. And we also brought them measles. They gave us more syphilis, right? So, I mean, these diseases do, when you have wars, you have a lot of human osmotic pressure, people moving around, diseases do spread. Sometimes they spread by fleas or whatever, right? Or lice, epidemic typhus by lice, Black Death by fleas, that sort of thing. And so I mean, that actually all goes along with it. But one of the things that was in my paradigm, I was like, wow, this could be. So I'm trying to figure out a paradigm and figure out what's the truth and what's not the truth. And I can see on my own records, I bought ivermectin in March of 2020. And I think that was before anybody was really talking about it. And I bought HCQ in March and April. But in my own records, I can see where I immediately bought ivermectin. I was like, I don't know if this stuff works or what it's all about, but I'll get some right now because it's cheap and it's available. Because if this is really serious, I'm not going to be able to get it later. So I bought enough for my family and friends, and I didn't even tell them. I was just like, buy it. I don't want to sound crazy. I was just like, I'll just buy it and keep it in a cool, dark place. And if we need it, I'll be like, hey, here you go. I happen to have some. You know what I mean? And if you don't need it, then I'll just like forget about it. And because you got to take responsibility for your circles, right? And then as time went on, I'm like, wait a minute, they're doing things that don't make sense. Why? Okay, now they're talking about lockdown, but Trump's not letting people come in from like China, but he's letting Chinese go to Indonesia first and then go to United States or wherever. So Chinese were just going to different places first, right? You need to lock it all down. Like if you're going to do a real lockdown, it's the same in Australia. Like the Hong Kongers that wanted to go to school in Australia, a lot of them are university students that were doing the fighting against China and the Hong Kong, that last 2019-20 fighting. They a lot wanted to go back to school in Australia, and they weren't allowed to fly from Hong Kong back to Australia. So they had to go through Indonesia first or Thailand or something. And they're all joking about it. Like, how's that for a lockdown? It doesn't make any sense. So, and likewise with Trump and his so-called lockdowns, I'm like, there's no lockdown. They're just connecting flights and spending more time and more airports and more, more airplanes. So that didn't fit. Something was wrong. I could smell something was off because they're not that stupid, unless it was just politically stupid moves. I didn't know. But then when it came time for the jabs, that was when I made my face change. And actually, I talked with one of my friends, Tim Lynch. He's a retired Marine Corps infantry officer. I was with him in Afghanistan when he was, we ran around all over Afghanistan together. And I called up Tim in Texas and I was like, what do you think about all this? This was before the jabs. And he said, oh, it's all nonsense. Think about it. He always talks like that. He always talks like a Marine infantry guy. He's like, think about it. Are you thinking about it? It's like, this will be a real pandemic when all the bums are dead on the streets. And I was like, he's making a good point. And I'm like, have you gone to check the bums on the streets? He's like, yeah, I have. They're still there. And I'm like, well, that would be Tim. He would do a proper recon. He's a Marine infantry officer. And so I started asking other people, like in different parts of the country, hey, go out and check and see if their bums are still alive on the streets. You know what I mean? Because that made sense. Like that's like farmer sense. That's like Marine Corps infantry sense. If the people with the weak immune systems that are on drugs are still out all over the streets and they're not dead, then this pandemic can't be too serious, right? It's just like a kind of a common sense test, right? And I was like, well, you know what? There's that infantry Marine Corps common sense again. And that held a lot of weight with me because, you know what I mean? Because that was like, why aren't they dead? Something's not right here, right? And then it came with the jabs. And that was when I was like, that's it for me. I'm out. Kirk's out. You know what I mean? It's like, and that was when I was like, no chance I'm taking the jab. And by the way, I have a bunch of old books from the 1800s. There's a bunch of these. You can find them online. And they're about vaccines and stuff from the, like how dangerous they are. I got one from 1888, I think another from 1882. And they're like clear titles on the books, things like this might be the right title. It's very close. If not, it's like, I think this is from 1882, 1879. There's this British doctor, and he's like, smallpox vaccine is dangerous and unnecessary or something like that. And then you just read the first paragraph, and it's like happened this morning. He's like, and this is an affront to our freedoms and all this stuff. First paragraph, man, he just like comes out duking it out like, and these things are not efficacious and they're killing people. And I've done 40 years of statistical, I think it was 40 years of statistical, which he lays them out. He lays out the math in there, and he lays out the, his bibliography of studies and stuff. He's making a real killer case. I read the whole book. And then as you go through there, you're like, all this stuff could have been written this morning, every single piece of it. And then there's quite a few other books from different people at different times, but in that general time frame, they're like way anti-vax, and they don't sound crazy at all. They're like, no, I've done the studies and we don't need this, and it seems to be killing people. And here's the people who actually got the smallpox vaccine, and they're actually dying from smallpox. And the people that don't get it mysteriously are not dying, right? And so it was like, And so again, these old books for the win. Again, there's nothing new under the sun. But at first, I thought the pandemic was real in the very beginning. Their information war. I mean, as much as I study information war, it doesn't mean they can't get a punch in now and then and punch you in the face, right? I mean, yeah, you can be a great boxer, boom, every once in a while, fooled me, right? You know what I mean? But as soon as you're onto it, that was it. Then it's like, okay, this is a magician, this is a trick. That means all this, and I never considered taking the jab. It was anti-jab from day one, right? But I was never anti-vaccine. Again, in 2019, I got actual what I thought were vaccines. Who knows what they were? They may have made my hair fall out. And, I don't know. But no, I just keep my head shaved. But what I'm getting to is the I will never take another one ever, period. I'll never take another hypodermic in my body unless I get hit by a car and I need it. You know what I mean? And I got to, unless I desperately need it, nothing. I don't want any medicine. I don't take medicines anyway. Though I do drink coffee. So that's the worst thing I do is I drink coffee. I should probably stop. But, zero intoxicants, no drugs, zero, right? And that's another interesting topic I've brought up a few times at different, not with you today, but is PTSD, all related to this stuff. Like I did a tremendous amount of actual combat, right? Which people who followed my work during the wars saw it was actually a lot of real combat because it was like photos, videos. Commander of CENTCOM, current commander Eric Carrilla got shot right in front of me. Stuff like I got a bullet hitting off a wall right in front of me that I caught with my own camera this close. I mean, it was literally, it could have splashed me in the face, right? It was right that all the time. I did this for years, right? Bombings, body parts everywhere, people burning to death. Terrible, really horrible stuff. And quite horrible. But why don't I have PTSD? I don't have any at all. I mean, I don't like, if there's a loud noise, no, it can startle me, but that'll startle anybody. You know what I mean? If it's like a boom, of course, but I'm not jumping under tables and stuff like that. As soon as I realize it's not a gunshot or whatever, then I'm good to go. And, it's like, and I'm not stressed or sweating when it happens either. I'm just checking to see if I need to do something. That's all. I'm not checking to see if now I'm cowering in a corner or in the closet for a week. Doesn't happen, right? Why not? Why not? And why do so many of my friends not have PTSD and so many others have been diagnosed with it and then get put on drugs by the VA, and then they do seem to have something wrong with them, right? I have specific reasons which I think are probably correct. I don't know. One is I don't do any intoxicants, right? Nothing. Well, I do drink caffeine, and I drink my coffee, and which is probably bad, and so I should stop that, but I'm not going to, not yet. And but another is music. When many people have come to me about their sadness or whatever, for whatever reason, people have come to me like they get depression or whatever. This has happened for years, actually. People are like, why are you always like upbeat no matter what happens? I'm like, well, first I've learned by being tuned to myself. And I think I got that from sports probably when I used to do like tremendous amounts of sports. You kind of get tuned into yourself a lot, right? Like your rhythms and stuff. And I noticed music can have an effect on my performance. Like some music makes you let's say persuade you or something or influence you to do better, and some can be like take your energy away. And I'm like, wow, how's that happening? I'm being influenced by this vibration, right? And somehow how my mind processes it. And so then I started to realize, well, don't listen to sad music. But then you start getting tuned into, wow, there's a lot of sad music out there. Once you get tuned into that, like there's a lot of sad music out there. And there's a lot of music telling people to take drugs and go to the bar, whatever, just act crazy. You know what I mean? There's a lot of music like that, right? And just like, and again, music, it was only much later that I realized that music was a weapon. But I didn't realize that at that time. I just noticed it, right? And so here, I think, is the magic of avoiding PTSD. One is when people say, you did so much, you must feel very bad. Hey, get away from me. That would tell me how I must feel very bad. I don't want to hear that, right? It's like, stop. You're throwing bad magic on me, right? What was that? Ricky Bobby, don't throw that bad stuff on me. How's that go? You know, what was that movie? And that's a funny movie. He's like, don't you come at me with that bad vibes or whatever, or negative vibes from Kelly's Heroes. There you go with those negative vibes again, Moriarty. It's that. Don't come at me with those negative vibes. But that's what they do. They go after our veterans and other people who should be leaders. And keep in mind, the number one traumas for PTSD in America, I believe, are like car accidents and domestic abuse and rape and that sort of thing. It's not combat. And a lot of the people who say they have PTSD from the military, they were never in combat. They never even went overseas. A huge amount of them. Most of the suicides in the U.S. military, they didn't even go overseas. They never got deployed. They never went to a war, right? It's a huge amount of suicides. I remember years ago, it was like 23 a day or something like that. It was a lot. It was over 20 a day, right? That's when I first reported that years ago, like 15 years ago or something. People are like, that's a lie. I'm like, I got it from the military, man. Take it up with them. They might be lying. I don't know. But I know one thing. I know people personally in the military who committed suicide, numerous, right? And like that I actually knew, right? And I'm like, that's a lot that I actually knew that many, right? And just like weird. Why are they doing this? And I still don't know. But in any case, when it comes to the PTSD, you can influence people. You can insert those feelings into people. This is brainwashing, right? And you know, wow, you did so much. And they can put you can get a disability for PTSD, right? You can get money for it. Here we go with the Dawes rolls thing again. Here we go with the, you know, superism for I need to take a note on that. Superism for PTSD, right? You want some soup? Say you got PTSD, right? And then you'll be put on these drugs, and you will, well, then you'll have crazy thoughts because I don't know what these drugs are doing, but all of my friends that get on those drugs, I'm like, listen, man, you're like every other friend that says they got PTSD, and you get all these freaking drugs from the VA and then you really do act crazy because you weren't acting crazy before, right? So, but I think here's the magic. Don't take those drugs. Don't take any drugs unless you need, really, honestly, no kidding, need those drugs for some reason. Why are you taking them, right? And another thing is no intoxicants, no alcohol, no dope of any kind, right? Dope is for dopes. Don't do it, right? We need you awake. We got big things happening, right? We need everybody alert, right? And we don't have time for dopes and dope heads that are out defending their bongs, but they're not defending our border, right? Why were you allowed to go to the liquor store during the lockdowns, but not to church? We all know the reason. And so, sunlight is key. That's why I got a little sunburn on my head yesterday. Yeah, but I was walking too late. It's better to go in the morning when the sun's coming up, but we got a late start. And so, but sunlight and walking in the sunlight, man, sunlight's magic. I mean, God gives you everything you need. Sunlight, you know, that's why I got a bunch of sunlight coming through the windows right now. Sunlight is key. I don't know what it is about sunlight. I don't know what it is about walking, but walking in sunlight, like I would take breaks from the wars. I did so much combat. It was unbelievable because I was always going out with the units in the most combat. I did this for years, right? And then I went off to a lot of fighting in Thailand and other places, and yet I can still do it, right? And I would take breaks from Iraq or Afghanistan. When I would go back to the United States, everybody's bothering you. Oh, come to Washington, come see the senator and all this crap. Like, I don't want to see a senator. I don't want to see a congressman. I don't want to come to Boston. I just want to hang out with my grandmother, and that's it. I just turn off my phone. I'm hanging out with my grandmother, and I'm not going up to New York. I'm not going to Los Angeles. You know, you got Bruce Willis wants to do this and all these. I'm hanging out with my granny, right? So I'll just go hang out with my granny, do a bunch of walks and stuff. And then I go back to the wars. And then I wasn't married at the time. And so then I'd go back to the wars, right? And so and you know, my grandmother, I saw you on the news. What are you doing over there? And I'm like, it's not a big deal. And yeah, actually, when I joined the Army, I told her I was going into supply because I didn't want her to know I was going in Green Berets. I should have been honest with her, but it's your grandmother. And later on, she found out, I heard you became one of those Green Berets. I'm like, I kind of did, but well, yeah, it's not a big deal. She's like, okay. My grandmother used to tell me all the time, one day you children are going to be buying bottled water in the stores, right? And I'm like, we're never going to buy bottled water in the stores. Oh, you will, Michael. You read a lot of those books, but you haven't seen this world like your granny has. And I'm like, yeah, but we're not going to buy bottled water in the stores. That's just kind of crazy. Michael, I'm not crazy. And I'm telling you, I know what they're doing. She was right. She's like Granny Alex Jones. Now you realize every time I open a bottle of water now, I think of my grandmother. Warning, warning. You're going to buy bottled water out of the stores. And again, when she was saying that, it was straight up crazy talk, right? And it all came out true. And so it wasn't crazy after all. And but on the PTSD, don't do drugs, don't do intoxicants, sunlight walks, walk in the sunlight, and no sad music. When people have come to me about their depression stuff, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm just saying, I want to see what music they're listening. Can I see your phone, please? There we go. There's your music stuff. Okay, that's gone. That's gone. That's gone. Here, just get rid of all that crap. Stop listening to music. Listen, read books. Read books and go for walks in the sunlight. Stop listening to music, right? Listen, all you listen to is a bunch of sad music and crazy talk stuff, right? That's why you're acting crazy, is this music you're listening to. And don't tell me you're not doing drugs. Just don't do them, right? If you're doing any, stop. If you're drinking alcohol, let me look in your cabinet here. I'm gonna go to your house, right? It's like, that's how you get rid of that crap. You stop doing it. You stop listening to that music. You don't drink those intoxicants. You don't do them, and you go for walks in the sunlight. I'm telling you, magic. No drugs, no alcohol, walks in the sunlight, no sad music, no crazy music. And you try all that before you go to a doctor. Just do that.
Amen. Yeah, I was just going to mention, especially earlier how, people having, taken their lives and such. And, to mention your point, Michael, there are 4 people from my class. I'm sure this was some other members of the audience previously. 4 people from one of my classes, presumably all from suicide. I mean, I know some of them are for sure. The other ones, I presume as well. And then, LT I worked under, he was out of Sigonelli, I believe, took his life. And then just a ton of this is also tangential, ton of other people died from, during the COVID thing. Like I couldn't believe it. It was, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of sharing with you. Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, all of our families have been in wars. Everybody listening to this, every one of our families has been in a lot of war, and they've been in a lot of pandemic, and they've been in a lot of famine. Ain't nobody listening to this that came from a family line that was not in a lot of this stuff, and we're still here because we're survivors, right? And that's just the way it is, all of us. And another thing, there is nobody watching this, I'm sure, who hasn't had at least one addicted person in their family to something, whether that's gambling or something. And our enemies use these addictions to destroy our families and our cultures, right? So even if you don't take a drop of anything or do any drugs or any of that stuff, but one person you could have a family of 10, but one is crazed out on opium or something. That's like catching a missile through your window, right? It's like our whole house is disrupted because of one crazy person on drugs, right? Or alcohol, or addicted to gambling and start stealing people's money. And everybody watching this has been through this. I have never seen an exception in any country. I brought this up with Thai people, Japanese. I just was talking with a bunch of Japanese about this recently. I'm like, is anybody in here not had somebody in their family or you yourself who's been addicted to something, right? And has caused disruption in your own life, or you've done it to somebody else. And you need to, if you're doing it, You need to stop and come back with the team, right? And because we need all hands on deck, and that means clear. Our teams need to be clear, clean. They need to be clean thinking, right? They need to get good sleep. Sleep is vital. Sleep is, I should have mentioned sleep. Sleep, sunshine, no intoxicants, no sad or crazy music. Sleep is super medicine, right? And once you get these things, you can talk the way I do for like 2 hours straight without taking a break. So, I mean, and maybe I should be quiet, but what I'm getting to is like, I did a lot of combat. I got no PTSD. Maybe it's because I don't need drugs. Maybe I got a bigger mission. When you got a bigger mission in life, if your mission is your family, if your mission is your country, if your mission is to make sure the people in your congregation are good to go, safe, and whatever things that you can provide, then if you have a mission in life, you have a mission in life. You know what I mean? Having a mission in life that's bigger than you is like heaven. I mean, just make sure it's a good mission, right? Make sure it's a mission that's something worthy of the pearly gates, right? So that when you finish the race and it's over, you've done well. You've run the race. But having a mission in your life and being clean and no sad music, before you know it, you're going to have unbelievable amounts of energy. You're always going to have something to do, and you're going to be happy for whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, despite all the things that I know, Masako says to me all the time, despite all the things that we do and know and see, we're happy. And I'm like, exactly, because we demand that we be happy, because we have to set an example for our tribe, right? We have to be leaders. We have to find other leaders, and we have to make people into leaders, help them plant mustard seeds, raise them up, right? That's why we take young people out to the Darien Gap, take older people too, serious people. We take them out to the jungles, take them to the museums, take them to show them stuff. And I always have only one thing that I say. Like when I took Anthony Rubin, incredible Anthony Rubin, that guy is unbelievable. You should interview that guy if you ever get a chance. Muckraker.com. Anthony Rubin, I said, just do two things for me and I'll help you out tremendously. You won't believe the things that I'll do. And I've helped him tremendously. And he's done these two things: is talk bad about drugs. Do that. Just talk bad about drugs. And once you learn more and more stuff that I'll show you different things, then find other people and teach them. That's it. You do those things and my help is never ending, right? And so that's a mission for me, and it creates a mission for him, right? So you can multi-level missioning in a sense, but there's no money transaction at all. It's just, just like we have to win. We have to win. Once you have a mission that's bigger than you are, and things are different, and everybody needs to be on a mission. And so just make sure to think it through, that if you're not already on one, because many people are already on those, in which case, God bless you, and keep going. And one of the things that we're doing is studying this evil, because it's dismantling us. But it's not invincible. One Japanese guy told me a few years ago, he said, I can defeat any man who sleeps. And I'm like, that's perfect. So I just said it again. I said, I'm going to spread that. He's like, I can defeat any man, because we were talking about fighting these big monsters, right? He's like, I can defeat any man who sleeps. I'm like, everybody needs to hear that. It's like, because our enemies sleep too, right? They sleep. They're not omniscient. They've got their own. And one of the things too, a lot of these big dogs, we know some of their inner workings. Some of their families are highly dysfunctional, like the Gates, highly dysfunctional, and it's pretty, like, they're very vulnerable. I mean, because at the end of the day, there's fights between these oligarchs, and they're very predatory towards each other, very predatory, right? So a lot of these oligarchical structures also took the jabs, or also are, they attack each other. It's not like they all cooperate. They cooperate on some things and they're enemies on others. and some are just straight up enemies, and they intermarry and that sort of thing. But they're very predatory. They're predators by nature. A lot of them are narcissists, and remember, narcissists are always trying to defeat the other narcissist. And weirdly, they seem to select for narcissists, right? Like a lot of the people that are the big time globalists are highly narcissistic, right? Like Trump, Biden, those aren't the top dogs. Obviously, they're lower level dogs, even though president of the United States. But they're obviously, just like Netanyahu. He's not, he's another. He's like a leaf on a tree, and Trump is a leaf in the autumn, right? He's a golden leaf. He's quivering in the cold wind, and he's going to fall off at some point, and he's going to fall off in the stream and go to the sea, and it's over, right? And then he'll be replaced by another one. And by the way, when it comes to analysis, one of the things I've noticed is the when you focus on the wrong thing, like the leaf falling into the stream, a lot of people, when they're assigning the wrong causation to what they see, like they'll see the leaf going down the stream and say the leaf is moving the water, right? It's actually the water that's moving the leaf. But why is the water moving? The water is moving because it's moving in the direction of downhill. Gravity. Well, what's gravity, right? We keep getting into the bottom of these pushka dolls, right? But the closer you can get down into these core truths, like Trump is a Zionist, that's clear, but that's not his atomic level core. He's a narcissist, right? So he's going to do what benefits Trump, right? But at the end of the day, he's going to fight the other narcissist, right, around him, because that's what they do. That's just, gators are cannibals. Gators eat other gators. Crocodiles are cannibals. Crocodiles eat other crocodiles, right? You know what I mean? And narcissists are cannibalistic to each other. Whenever they, see that each other can be useful, or they're too powerful and don't want to take one on or whatever, then they'll get along. But that's only always temporary. As soon as one of the things that one of the weaknesses that the Zionists actually have, a severe weakness, is their power structure is based on fear, right? It's based on fear. Just as the people around Bill Gates, they operate around fear. And I just insider baseball, right? So when you operate on fear, when your structure, like Trump, is based on fear, like the people around you, he might do something bad to me, right? Whenever they sense weakness in you, they're going to come out like piranhas. They're going to rip you apart. All those people you treated like that, they're going to take out their little gram of flesh, and it's going to add up, right? And that's what the Zionists have been doing. They've been operating on fear. Everybody's afraid they'll get debanked. They're going to call me anti-Semite or whatever. Can you imagine that white guy, Maliakovsky? What's his name again? Netanyahu? No, his real name's Maliakovsky. He's whiter than I am, and he'll throw out the anti-Semite term because they try to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Judaism and Zionism with Judaism, which they're not. They're separate things. Zionism is a party, right? But they operate on fear. Fear, right? It's always the whip. And they'll carrot some people. The people that, carrots can be cheaper than whips. But they're going to do with whatever makes the most sense. Whip or carrot, it doesn't matter. The main thing is slave. It's either, slavery through, inducement or like chemicals or whatever, or slavery through, we got the videos of you on Epstein Island type stuff, coercion, mice, right? Mice. When it comes to recruiting people, it's mice, right? The acronym MICE. Money, ideology, coercion, ego. MICE. Money, ideology, coercion, ego. Trump falls for ego and money and coercion if they've got something on him, which it's hard to imagine that they don't. But ideology, it doesn't seem to have any, because narcissists don't tend to have, the ideology tends to be ideology, right? Yeah, like I theology. It's the theology of themselves, right? And so
I got to ask. Go, sorry.
So I mean, the Like, I don't see any ideological basis to anything that he does. So that's why on my very accurate predictions on Trump, which have been extremely accurate uh, for years, they haven't made many friends. Keep in mind, the things that I've reported have guaranteed that I won't be flush with massive amounts of money, like Daily Wire, who is clearly is just a Zionist operation, or Jordan Peterson or any of those guys, right? Because I go against the Chinese Communist Party. Boom. That's a big money source for a lot of people, right? I go directly against them. I've written 3 books attacking them that are only in Japanese. I go against the Chinese Communist Party, and I go against Zionists, right? Boom, boom. The 2 major oligarchical galaxies right there. And I go against them on a regular basis, and Trump for the submunition little firework. So it's like boom, boom, and boom against Trump. That's shutting off flows of resources to me, but I'm on a mission, right? And it's like, and I have a higher, I'm on the mice, I would be ideology, not I as in narcissist, but I as an ideology. People who have a higher ideology, that's why the people that are money, ego and coercion, they will often want to kill the ideology people, unless the ideology people can be harnessed, which they can be. Like, for instance, a lot of great Christians, including people that I know very closely, are very serious supporters of Israel, no matter what they do, right? No matter what they do. And because they are ideologically driven to support Israel, and they will be useful idiots to the larger, higher level players, because the ideological player can oftentimes be subsumed by the other, because when you study their firmware, because what happens is people study what makes you click, and studying your firmware, basically, in anthropological warfare. They study, like you see the Chinese study Christians a lot. They study they study Jews a lot. Because they study each other, right? They're trying to, who's zooming who. Remember that song from Aretha Franklin? Who's zooming who, right? It's like the who's zooming who here, because they're trying to zoom each other, right? Like you see the Protestants versus the Catholics fighting in Ireland. We went up there a few years ago. They got a huge wall between Protestants and Catholics, because they fight each other. These are white guy Irish fighting white guy Irish, Protestant versus Catholics, and hardcore. And the superism thing, they keep that alive. The idea, and it's a constant thing that comes up with those guys. How the Protestants were forcing Catholics to convert through starvation, right? So, I mean, these are what I'm getting to is, when people study your firmware in anthropological warfare, they can figure out how to write things into your firmware doing normal brainwashing techniques, right? And suddenly they take a really good person and just deviate them off a little bit. And the next thing you know, you're supporting genocide. Literally supporting genocide, right? And it's just a little bit of twist and turn and controlling the information flow. You can't get information from these places, but you can get it from this. Remember, in GHQ, the general headquarters in Japan after World War II, they destroyed thousands of book titles here in Japan, right? They wanted to cut off that source of the old strength that Japanese had and insert new weakness. And that's what they do with us. That's what happens with Christians too. Notice none of the preachers, very few of the preachers, stood up against the jab. Very few, right? That just stood up hardcore, like, nope, we're not going to do it. Some did, right? Those are the people you need to pay attention to, because strength is important. Remember, cowardice is the seed of treason, right? The Bible talks about cowardism numerous times, right? And be not afraid. I go before thee always, right? You need strength is an intrinsic, it's a part of the metal, right? It's not like it's either, and you can develop strength, you can become stronger, and you can become weaker. That's what intoxicants do, make you weaker, right? But the people that are strong, they can hold the course with their compass, right? They can hold the course. Like, these waves are knocking me all over the place. Like, it's really tempting to do such and such, but I got to keep sailing that way, right? And that is the strength, right? And the people without the strength to do that, they're easily manipulated. They'll easily become traitors, and that's very important to keep that in mind, right? So it's important that we very much work on our ecosystems of people. Like, I won't deal with anybody on any close level that's on intoxicants, because I know that's a natural traitor, whether they are actually inside of themselves, actually at their core, very good people. I know that they have opened the door, and I know what can be done with that door, right? And so you have to encourage people, don't do that stuff, right? Because we need you strong. We need our whole ecosystem to be strong. We need people to uh, to think as leaders on whatever level that you are at, whether the leader of yourself, the leader of your family, the leader of whatever, your friends at school. Just be a leader, a quiet leader, more speaking leader, writing leader, whatever. And that requires you have presence of mind. And that requires that you study. That requires knowledge. That requires qualities that you can develop. And one of those has to be at all times personal strength, right? And so, which means getting rid of things that make you weak.
So then, as it obviously, we're talking about being a leader and having a strong constitution, things of that nature, and then taking a step back, and I'm thinking of some of the things that we've been discussing over the course of the conversation, and to um, highlight on some of those things earlier that we kind of covered, Michael. Um, as it relates to the powers that be, these oligarchies, some of them that exist in the West, and that there's this what appears to be a impending kinetic conflict with these BRICS nations. I guess, to be succinct, it seems we are already in WW3, and we've talked about all these, and that there we then that you mentioned about all these other forms of war, these myriad facets of warfare that are going on presently and have been for some time. Do you see it coming together climactically in some type of hypersonic missile scenario going on? Because just today, if I recall, I'm looking at the headline here: Trump reduces Russia-Ukraine deadline to 10 to 12 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Colonel McGregor sent me that too, something similar to that, and as did quite a few others. Um, it's very clear that, again, Trump is at his core narcissist, but his outer shell is Zionist. And so he plays an American in the movie. And I think he plays a Zionist in the movie too, but the Zionist is the main influential, his main magnetic field is Zionism, and outside of himself. And they want that war. They want that war. They want that war with Russia. They want to defeat Russia and Iran. Remember, and China. Remember, that's SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? And if you want ultimate corporal power in this world, you need to control Panama Canal. You need to control Suez, Bab el Mandeb, Strait of Hormuz. You need to control Malacca. But the ones that you actually are more within reach would be Panama, Suez. Bab el Mandeb's contested right now with the Houthis, so you'd have to do whatever. And then there's the Djibouti thing, and Chinese are over there. But anyway, not to go into that. And Hormuz. I mean, if you control Hormuz, you can really damage the whole SCO architecture. And of course, same likewise down in Panama. And there's other points as well, many points of pressure And they all know this. These are all big boys. Like, you're not going to surprise the Chinese or the Russians with this. These are very serious people. They've got big maps on their walls too, right? And and they know where the strengths and weaknesses are, and they want this war with Russia. They want to destroy Russia. This is the reason how we were able to successfully predict Nord Stream, right? If you look at the Mackinder theory of the world island, this is kind of old stuff, but it holds. And Mahan as well, Alfred Mann, Halford Mackinder and Alfred Mann is who I'm talking about for those who are tracking on these things. But the English and others, especially English, have wanted to keep Russia separated from Germany for a long time. Because if they work together, they can create a structure that will easily take Europe, right? And so Nord Stream, as an example, is a way that Germany was getting cheaper energy, natural gas for production, right? And that was why on my Carver matrix, for those who know what Carver matrix is, I was like, if I were them, I would take out, if I wanted to deindustrialize Europe, I would take out Germany. If I were going to take out Germany, what would I do? I would take out Nord Stream and BASF and Groningen gas field and a few others like that. I would take Rotterdam and I would take Antwerp. I would do things like that. Hamburg, I would take these things, right? And look, they took out Nord Stream, they took out Groningen. BASF is moving a lot of their operations to China and other places, right? But it's not like everything is going perfectly for them, because there's multiple oligarchs. They're having their own battles that most people can't see, but you can see them actually if you just know what you're looking at, right? And so it's not like it's a perfect plan that's unfolding, because it's contested. They're fighting each other, and so, but splitting Russia from Germany hurts Russia and Germany, keeps them both smaller. But the Zionists, they want to take Ukraine as well, and they want to take Russia out. They want to take Russia ultimately, right? And so, and they want to take Argentina. They want to take Panama, Guatemala. There's quite a few in the United States, right? But so do the Chinese. They want to take a lot of these things as well. So it's not like it's going perfectly for anybody. And so it's it's Godzilla versus Mothra versus Gamera. You know what I mean? It's like it's all these, it's all these different creatures fighting each other, and stepped on a bus, right? And the bus is, contains most of us.
As it relates to, and if you got to pivot, of course, please let me know.
I do have to go, actually.
Okay, gotcha. Then I'll wrap it up here, real quick here. Thoughts on David Icke and Catherine Austin Fitts?
I'm not tracking on them that much enough to say, but actually quite a few people have asked me, so I should be. But I'm not tracking on them enough to say, so I'm just going to run silent. Which is not an endorsement or saying anything bad. I'm just not tracking enough to know, because I'm down here. My headlights are on the ground more than, yeah. What are your thoughts about them?
Well, I had heard of David Icke, and only recently just perused through his book. Like I think it's called The Greatest Secret, or I don't know, something to that tune. And I found it very interesting, and found it very alarming, Michael, that it brought up an element of like a Satanism thing. And I know it sounds kind of kooky for those that haven't encountered that before, but it's just a very weird. This is a very strange world we're in.
Satanism is quite real. It's quite real. It's not like it's fake. It's obvious. I mean, that
So okay,
cannibal I tracked down was straight up. Yeah.
so then here I'm going to go down the rabbit hole just a moment. Okay, 'cause I know you also got to go the pedo cult stuff. That stuff's going on.
The Oh, I don't know. Masako and I were talking about that yesterday, but my guess would be yes. My guess would be yes. I just don't know the extent of it, because we know that huge amounts of children are trafficked. That's just a fact. I mean, we see it. We physically see it. We know, like the warehouse, the old Walmart supercenter down there in Brownsville in Texas. I mean, we've been there and reported on it, and I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's quite real. Where are all these children going to, right? I don't know. I mean, we've reported on this a lot. And so what's happening to them? You know, one thing, a lot of these oligarchs, they want to live forever. They're very clear about that. There's nothing that they wouldn't do to live forever, right? Whether that's, you know, in old forms of thinking, a lot of people think that if you eat strong people or whatever, you can get more life or more strength or more wisdom, right? It's an old idea, right? And you know, whether or not they're actually doing the adrenochrome thing, I don't know, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, not even a little bit, right? It's well within the realm of possibility. But are they actually doing that? I don't know. But is it within the realm of possibility? Oh, yeah, done deal. It's just, I don't know what the extent of it is. But I would say this: people like Hillary Clinton, Bill Gates, all these people that are really have been or are in power positions or very wealthy, obviously they haven't found the secret to living forever because they're aging at the same rates that we are, right? So it's like, I mean, we can look at that evidence. You know, it's not like, I mean, but it's clear that they've been searching for these ways, right? And for centuries, but it hasn't worked.
Very well. Michael, how can people learn more about you and get in touch with you?
I'm on Substack. You might want to go to my Substack. There's some really interesting things on there. I'm not going to be able to publish today because we got a professor coming over soon that we got to um, Professor Ishii. Actually, he's a professor on here in Japan who studies old uh, Chinese writing and old books and old whatnot because he's studying historical issues that greatly affect Japan and China today.
Gotcha. Michael, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous.
Thank you, Christian. Anytime.
It's been an honor, and yeah, we'll definitely connect here soon.
Awesome. Talk later.
Likewise. Quick ask: over half of you who watch the show regularly haven't yet subscribed. If you've enjoyed the show, you're finding value in it, subscribing is really the best way to support the channel. It's of course free. It literally takes 2 seconds, and it lets the algorithm know that this content matters. And of course, my commitment to you is going to be that I'm going to continue to bring on great guests, refine those questions. And of course, I'm always receptive to your feedback. If there's certain people that you'd like to have on, or certain questions, or this, that, and the other that you'd like to have as part of the show going forward, things of that nature, please let me know. I'm pretty easy to access. Anyhow, that's my commitment to you. If you can subscribe, that would mean a lot. Thanks.